Sorry about this. There's something happened with the computer, and I am now trying to send out the new link.
I hope everybody can find us.
Yeah, right, guys. If you're watching, I apologize for the goof up. Yeah, so.
I'm trying to see if I can go to the.
So if you're on, died.
Yeah, I'm learning this too. So how do I?
Okay, so let me copy this. I gotta send it over to Facebook. Sorry, everyone. Give me one more second.
Yeah, I guess I can chat.
Yeah. Ay, ay, ay. Okay. See if anyone made it over to this one. Doesn't look like it, which means we lost everybody. Oh, that stinks. Can you email everybody and let them know?
You want me to email? Okay, I'm gonna go get my laptop.
Yeah.
And I will email so you can go ahead and start the
Okay.
show. Okay, everyone.
All right, everybody. Sorry about that. Most of you aren't even on here, so you have no idea what has happened. I don't think, because there's two people watching, and I'm betting that's Erika and I. Anyway, we've been having trouble about the screen with YouTube lately, and apparently tonight is no exception. So sorry about that. It's just the way it goes sometimes. Yeah. So we'll get started here in a second. I was going to take questions tonight, but that ain't going to happen if we don't have anybody to ask questions about. Oh, there it is. All right, Rox. Awesome. Awesome. Whew. Praise God. Sorry about that. So anyway, yeah, the oof, boy, that was scary. Thought I lost everyone. Erika's going to email everyone else and let them know the stream got moved. So Rox made it, so that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, tech difficulties seem to be a regular thing for us.
Okay, so you want me to email?
Yeah, if you just send them out. I tweeted it too, and
we'll. I just don't want to send too many emails. That's why I was wondering. But
yeah, I don't want to get on vocab stream and be like, hey everybody, we lost the link. That's I don't want him to think I'm trying to
read a vocab channel.
Oh, I love vocab. Yes. That's why I don't want to do that. But anyway. Okay, thanks. And while you're emailing, I'm going to pray and we'll get cracking. So here we go, guys. All right. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you so much. We thank you for this day and for all you've done for us, Dad. Please bless this time. Help us to honor and glorify you, the Son, and the Holy Spirit in everything that we do and say. Bring all things to our remembrance whatsoever we need to know, and help everything, again, to bring you honor and glory. We love you so much, and it's in Jesus' precious, powerful, and heavenly name we pray. Amen. All right. Oh, here we go. All right. Looks like everyone else that was on there found it. Okay. So if you all have any questions, let me just say, feel free to type them in, because what I'm going to talk about tonight, I'll just go unless there are any questions relevant. And then I don't mind that at all either way. Doesn't matter. Because I realize sometimes with what I do, it's fairly heavy philosophically. All right. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit tonight, but I am going to dumb it down a little bit because I know not everyone's a philosopher. So I want to sort of start from the ground and work my way up. Yeah. Oh, that's fine, Radical Love. I appreciate you, sis, being here, all of y'all.
Yes,
really.
Thank you so much, especially with technical difficulty. You guys are super awesome.
Yeah, so I will say, too, thank you so much. Shout out to all y'all. Hey, Corrance, Brother Corrance. Big shout out to Brother Corrance and to Nate2D2. I know Nate's back and forth for your support on our new Patreon account, so I appreciate that. I'm going to be doing some live videos on there coming up, or not live videos, sorry, recorded videos on there soon. One on philosophy and the Bible, and then a whole series, a different series as well. In addition to all of the other stuff that we're doing here on the YouTube channel. We will try to have a sort of like I know John over at What Do You Meme and Vocab and everyone else does for their Patreon supporters. Patreon, whatever. It's like Logos, either way.
And where can people find us on Patreon?
So on Patreon, it's just Believing Thinkers. It's easy enough to find. Or if you're on our channel and you're not familiar with Patreon, under our main page, if you will, on the channel, if you're watching this after the fact, the banner image, there is a couple of little icons on there. The Patreons is, I think, just an orange P, although it's so small, depending on what you're looking at, the icon might be real small. You just click that, and that should take you right to our page. Yeah, and any support is appreciated. We really do appreciate it. We are trying to, I do want to mention this too, that we are trying to save up to do a couple of things. One is to go nonprofit status, which is not the most expensive thing in the world. It's like $400 to $600 for what we're doing. But then I also want to pay for some video support to put on our website. And if y'all aren't signed up on the email list, you may want to get on there. We try not to spam. The only things we do is try to notify everyone when we're doing videos. And the reason for that is so that if YouTube pulls the plug on us, like they're doing on everyone else slowly, then y'all can be notified and you know what's going on. Thank you so much, Radical Love. I appreciate that, sister. So, you know, it's more for that than anything else, because Erika and I will do our ministry for as long as God allows us, no matter what, no matter how much financial support we have or don't have. We don't care about that. It just goes faster, obviously. And so one of the things we want to do is be able to do the live streams and the video hosting all from our website, just in case something goes wrong with YouTube, that we're already able to do it from there. We're set up for it. To do that, it's like $900 a year. So that's the other thing we're trying to save up for. So that's where that money goes. It doesn't go to pay for my book habit. Oops, hit the computer. That is probably what knocked the stream out last time. So anyway, again, if there are any questions y'all have, and one other thing too, Roxby, I know that on the last stream that we sort of did that private group thing, which is what I was going to say. We're going to have one of those monthly too, by the way. I'll try to schedule it around Vocab and John so that we're not all overlapping too much. But I thought maybe you, Rox, you were going to ask a question there, and I felt like I cut you off. So I am sorry, folks.
I sent the email to
thank you, sweetheart. I don't ever want to be rude and ever cut anyone off. That's not my thing.
Yes, you mean the chat going on?
Yep.
Yes. If we didn't catch your question, please you can ask again. Sometimes chat goes fast and we might not catch that.
Let me see. I'm gonna. You could, anything else you want to say, hon? I'm gonna turn on another light here. So.
Yes. So Father's Day is coming up, right?
Yeah.
You're excited. What are you guys doing on Father's Day?
Yeah.
You're gonna go see your family.
Let me see if that sheds a little light on you.
I like the light. Extra light. Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome.
Oh, you're so far back. That's why. Can you scoot forward a little?
Do you want me to?
You can put your computer on here if you want. That'll help. It's because I'm blocking the light here, and so what's happening is you're in my shadow.
Okay.
Okay. Well, good, Rox. I'm glad, and I feel bad. I don't ever want to do that. And so we cut y'all off because every single one of y'all are important.
Yes, we love all the thinkers.
Yeah.
And we have a very great group of people.
Yeah, we do, and that's why. That's the other thing is I want to try to answer everyone's questions.
Yes.
So
yes, that's what we are here for. That's why we go live. You know, so we can connect with you guys, answer the questions. Every time we go live, we have fun.
So I'm just going to jump into it then. So tonight we're talking about rationality, but I think I sort of need to preface what I'm going to say with some things about. Hey, David Lee Rath. I like that name.
Welcome.
So with I was a big Van Halen fan growing up, guys, so that name just caught my eye. So at any rate, that and David Lee Roth looks like William Lane Craig. If you guys have seen any modern pictures of them and you see William Lane Craig side by side, they look a lot alike. People bring up that comment all the time. So what we want to talk about tonight is start with some basics of what is philosophy. And I think this is important because what we're going to be talking about tonight sort of branches out from that. And I feel like it's really important. And there's a lot of confusion I've noticed, and I get it. I understand why, from Christians and from others as to what philosophy even is. And so oftentimes what happens is that folks in the confusion think that we shouldn't do philosophy, or they're not sure what we do with philosophy in regards to theology, biblical studies, and other things like that. I'm not going to spend too much time on this unless you all have any questions, so I'm just going to dive right into that. So this definition comes from a great book, Metaphilosophy, all right, by Nicholas Rescher, I guess. It looks German down there. So that book is a great book, folks, because metaphilosophy, if you're not familiar, is just sort of the philosophical study of philosophy. All right, it's getting outside philosophy and looking back in, essentially. Now, granted, there may be other metaphilosophy ways people think of it, but that's really all it is in my book. Okay, so I'm using that for, you can see why, that really to come up with a cogent or coherent definition of philosophy, you really need to take a step back and look inside. And so here Rescher says, it is a matter of rational inquiry, a cognitive venture in question resolution. Okay, so again, it's a cognitive venture in question resolution. So in other words, you have a question, you try to find a resolution to it, subject to the usual standards of rationality. All right, that's really what it is. Now, continuing on, the discipline seeks to bring rational order, system, and intelligibility to confusing diversity to our cognitive affairs. All right, so that's just what does it do, right? So it's bringing order to our cognitive affairs. Here's the thing, for me, I think for Erika and I both, we do like philosophical concepts. That's fun, or philosophical arguments, if you will. Mm-hmm. Okay, but I think for myself, maybe I'll ask you instead of just speaking for you, what do you love most about philosophy yourself?
I think that using philosophy, can I just add logic? Mm-hmm. Thinking logically, it helps you to communicate with more people. The reason I say that is because I noticed, according to this one, it's not really a scholarly article, but something I read, that some people tend to not use logic, but somebody found that the more you go to city place where people from many different backgrounds gather, then they start using logic more, or there's that tendency. It's because in rural place, maybe they kind of know everybody and they don't really, they understand, they get you, you know?
Right.
So, but if you meet somebody new from different background, but they're gonna go by, you have to kind of go by something that makes sense to everybody, right? Instead of, hey, you know this, you know, maybe they don't know. So I found that makes sense. By this, I mean, I think it's just the way everybody ought to think, or the way that makes sense, good standard that helps you. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
It does, it does.
When I read that, I found that interesting and useful.
On a side note, I'm just seeing a message from Radical Love, but I think that's from when the stream crashed earlier. If you all can still see us, let me know.
Okay.
Because there's a comment showing up in my feed, but it might be a delay.
Oh, how can I find?
So just let me know if the comments are still going. Just go to the video and see if the comments are still going.
Okay.
They look like they're still live, yeah. So anyway, yeah. So I don't know how much I mean, I guess that makes sense. I'm assuming there when they say philosophy, they're thinking of or logic rather. They're thinking of it in a David Lee Rath. I just caught your comment. I'll respond to that in just a second. I think they're thinking of it in a very naive sense. Not naive as in, guys, that doesn't mean, okay, thanks, Roxby. Says we're still live.
I'm going to see if I can find Radical Love.
So I think, so I think, thank you, Valeria. I appreciate that. So when I say naive, that's not meant to be an insult. Generally in philosophy, when that term is used, what it means is a sort of boots on the ground kind of method. In other words, not a formal way of doing it. It can mean, sometimes in philosophy we'll say it's naive psychology or naive this or naive that. It's just really an everyman's working kind of understanding of it. It's not meant to mean naive in a way that might be considered insulting. So David Lee Rath saying, talking about rationality, I think fear plays a big factor in Christians, not speaking in general, right? Being open to other things that aren't in the Bible, like yoga or meditation. And that's an interesting point, David, and I agree. Here's the thing, right? So what people don't realize is philosophy is used in everything we do every day, okay, including theology. So it makes me laugh when people say, "Oh, that's philosophy," when I'm having a theological discussion. And the reason why is, yeah, that's a big part of theology is doing philosophy. Okay, the difference, the confusion, I think, for a lot of people is they equivocate unintentionally, meaning that they use one word to mean two different things or multiple different things. And I just caught this from a theology textbook I have by David Clark. I love the series of books, folks. I was mentioning last time the John Feinberg book is in this series on Foundations of Evangelical Theology. To Know and Love God by David Clark is a great one on the actual method or methods of theology. So one thing that Brother Clark points out is that there's a difference between in philosophy, right, between what I would call procedural philosophy and content of philosophy, right? So or methods of philosophy and the content of philosophy. So think of it this way, right? That what Eric and I tend to love most about philosophy is its tools, the way it works, the way we use logic and other heuristic devices of philosophy. So what tends to happen is that, for instance, philosophy's subdivision, which logic, as Erica mentioned, has got some great tools for analyzing statements. So you can take any statement and form it into an argument structure and analyze it for different things. You can look at it and see, does this statement make sense? You know, obviously the logical, right? But then also, does this statement, does it contain, the premises, are they sufficient to bring about whatever its claim is? Let me give you guys an example, right? So if we made the statement, necessary and sufficient conditions, we used to have long discussions about this.
Yes.
If we say this, I got to get the statement right because this is philosophy here. So correct me if I go wrong on this because I'm going right off the top of my head. If the sidewalk is wet, then it is raining outside. The sidewalk is wet, therefore it is raining outside. Now, if I put that in the wrong order, okay, I've affirmed the consequent, or I've inverted the necessary and sufficient conditions. Now, don't worry. What that means is this. There are certain conditions that are necessary for an event to occur, okay? So the sidewalk being wet, ironically, isn't necessary for it to have rained. Why? Well, it depends on the location that you're talking about. I should make that point real quick, all right? That when you talk about a particular event happening in philosophy, you're assuming that the event is happening at the same place and in the same way that you're referring to it. Hopefully that makes sense. We would invoke something called ceteris paribus, all things being equal. So we're not bringing any outside factors into the concept. So now going back to that statement, all right, let me see, what was the statement originally? If the sidewalk is wet, then it was raining outside? If the sidewalk is wet, it was raining outside. Is the sidewalk being wet necessary for it being raining outside? Yeah, in a way. Is it sufficient to prove that it was raining outside? Yes. So necessary and sufficient conditions get confusing. Sufficiency doesn't mean that that's the only way that something can be the case. But it does mean that if something meets that criteria of sufficiency, that it is enough to bring about the event. Okay, so necessary by itself won't bring the event about, but is necessary for something in the, it could be, you could have several necessary events and one sufficient thing in order for something to have occurred, or in order for it to occur, future tense, whatever that is. Make sense so far? Did I goof on anything there? Did I get anything backwards?
I'm trying to see if that was
more confusing.
if that was the way it went. So can you repeat that one more time, please?
Yeah. So I'm again, guys. I'm not normally when Erika and I do philosophy. You guys can see some of the whiteboards.
We use this example.
I write everything out. So if the sidewalk is wet, then it was raining outside.
Okay.
The sidewalk is wet, therefore it rained outside.
Rained outside.
Or it's raining outside, whatever. So again, here,
okay.
Go ahead.
I think sidewalk wet. Are we talking necessary or sufficient? Of what was your statement about this? Am I slowing you down?
You're fine. All right. So let me say it this way. Okay. Again, so oxygen is necessary condition for fire, but not a sufficient one. Thank goodness. That's right, Corrence. And the fire one is or the sprinklers were on, Roxby. There you go. Now, remember, sufficiency doesn't mean it's the only way. That's the irony, right? So it could be that, yes, that it was the sprinklers or it was something else. That is absolutely true. Right. And that's what you have to be careful of in necessity and sufficiency, is that, and this is what took me a while to get it, is because I would say the same thing. I'd be like, well, but it could have been this or it could have been that. That's not, sufficiency doesn't care. Yes, there could be something else that could have been sufficient to bring that thing about. Sufficiency doesn't prove that something had happened that way. We're just saying that it is the case that thing is enough to bring something about. Let me invert it, because I think I've affirmed the consequent there. Let me go the other way. If I say, if it is raining, then the sidewalk will be wet. It is raining. Hey, Willie, it is raining, therefore the sidewalk is wet. Let me make sure I said that correctly. If it is raining outside, then the sidewalk will be wet. It is raining, therefore the sidewalk will be wet, right? Yeah. I had to make sure in philosophy, guys, in logic, you have to be careful how you organize things. So, I can't express that enough. All right. So these are just getting to the point. These are just tools that we use. Now, how does this fit into philosophy and theology and how these things fit together? All right. Here it is. Okay. That these tools are ways we examine things. So when we're using using philosophy in theology, we are clarifying statements. We're examining if something is sufficient to bring it about for an event to occur. We're using different tools. We're looking at categories. Is this in the correct category, or is somebody making a category error? These are common things that we use within exegesis, within our methods of exegesis, within our methods of hermeneutics. Now, we don't always call them by these names when we're using them that way, but if you guys have had if you've ever had an exegesis course or a hermeneutics course, you start to see, and you've had philosophy, you can start to see the parallels and the correlations. All right, it has to be the case. Now, where people tend to go wrong and they get a little gun shy, as David pointed out earlier about the philosophy and people sort of being apprehensive about it, okay, is that they tend to see philosophy, and we'll get to the Colossians passage, but they tend to see philosophy and think that, well, that there's some weird stuff in philosophy and people just think about weird things. And again, that's procedural versus content, all right, philosophy. In other words, what I'm talking about is procedural philosophy, the procedures, the methods of doing philosophy, the tools of it, versus concepts in it, okay? So different concepts in philosophy could be something of skepticism, like that we can't even trust that we are existent. We don't even know if we exist ourselves. You can get into Cartesian certainty and Kant and all these guys that were somewhat skeptical, and Hume that was also skeptical, and you can take it way too far. That is content spun off by procedural philosophy. Does that make sense so far? So you have a procedure, you take a certain way of procedure, which in this case would be skepticism, right? And you take that and then apply it, and you come up with a concept. We would all agree that there are certain concepts, okay, that are against theology, and I don't think any of us would disagree with that. So in Colossians 2:8-9, when Paul is saying, all right, beware that no one leads you astray of philosophy in vain. Let me get the right quote, because I've got this passage memorized in multiple different translations now, and so I end up messing it up because I'm thinking of two different ones. So let's see here. See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit. Okay, there's a number of things going on here in this passage. So the hello Yoko Ono, I'm talking to you. Fat boy 1018, are you talking to Erika?
Is there Yoko Ono here?
Yeah, so anyway. All right. So here's the deal, right? Oh, I just realized what. Hold on a second. Hey, mods, feel free to. If somebody starts getting stupid or nasty, to take care of it. I see that Fat Boy over there is trying to be derogatory, so we're gonna go ahead and put him in a timeout for now. All right. Anyway, getting back to the point here, okay, and that is when we say, you know, when we're talking about this passage, all right. Yeah, I don't mind somebody being a non-believer and being here, Wile E. Coyote. I just don't want them being rude and nasty. There's no place for that.
Everybody's welcome here as long as they are.
Yeah, as long as they're polite. That's all I care about. Somebody wants to be derogatory, and that's not going to happen. In fact, that reminds me. All right, there we go. All right, so getting back to it. Oh, Dave says Fat Boy is a troll. There we go. All right, so getting back to it, that with philosophy and empty deceit here, guys, that this is a hendiatus. The Jews, no, we don't want to crucify anyone. So what goes on here, guys, is that this philosophy and empty deceit is a hendiatus. When you look at the Greek construction that's going on here, I'm not going to get into it. You can look up hendiatus on online. But what's happening is you've got two concepts separated by an and. But when you remove that and, what you end up getting in the process is that you end up with what would actually be translated as vain philosophical teachings. So in other words, not all procedures of philosophy are bad, but certain teachings of philosophy are bad. Absolutely true. If you could tell that this is what Paul's talking about if you go earlier on in the chapter and break it down into verse into verse 4, you'll see that Paul's talking to them and telling them, look, I don't want you to be let me just go there and I'll read this real quick. Is that I say this in order that no one may delude you with plausible arguments. And so he's got a specific thing in mind, and he goes on throughout the chapter to talk about what these things are. They're not philosophy in general, but they're a very specific thing that he has in mind. So anyway, all right, continuing on here. So again, there is, just to say, a difference between procedural philosophy and concept philosophy. And here Paul is talking about a concept of philosophy or a particular, you know, idea of teaching, not all philosophy carte blanche. I'll get into that, like I said, on our Patreon stuff and in much greater detail in the future. Any questions, comments, concerns, gripes, complaints?
That's what I was about to ask thinkers. Actually, that makes sense to me because Sean and I have been talking about this particular passage. But if somebody has question, if you're going too fast, please feel free to ask question about that.
Hey, Adherent Apologetics, good to see you. Yeah, so yeah, y'all are fine being silly. We like to have fun in the chat. We just want to be polite to one another and not get too hard on people. All right, so moving on. So that's sort of what we're why I'm bringing all that up to discuss philosophy in general, right? Because now we're going to get into JTB, all right, justify true beliefs, and the whole idea here about, you know, hey, listen, in terms of concepts, are Christians rational? Why do we even need to worry about this? Why do we need to be concerned with rationality in the first place? So, Coyote, what do you mean, like Jews? I'm not tracking on that. Killed the Savior. Oops, sorry, went off on a rant. You'll have to I'm not reading all of your comments
if you have
there.
Question for me, and not talking to other thinkers, but if you wanted to ask us something, you can put believing
Erika,
thinkers or something like that, so we know that's for us.
Check it out.
So.
At any rate, so the question here then is why do we even need to worry about being rational? Now, here again, I'm going to go back to skepticism. What happened with Kant and Descartes and these gentlemen is they started noticing that there are certain things that can lead us down the road of questioning ourselves and what we believe. And for example, what I mean here is that if we're going to take a very old illustration, long before them, going back thousands of years, whereby you could stick a stick in a pool or body of water, and of course, what happens? You get an image that looks like this. Instead of when you put the stick in the water, you see one stick, but the refraction causes it to look broken. How far apart that is depends on the refraction. At any rate, so what thinkers started to realize is, hey, some of our perceptions can be deceived, and so we need to be careful. And so they started questioning, right? What is it that we can trust? Which of our beliefs can we trust? And so this, from that point forward, became a big deal. And so by the time you get to Descartes, Kant, and these other thinkers, they're really radically trying to shake it up and understand these things. The problem, okay, with too much skepticism is it becomes unlivable. All right. And so going back to that Nick's book on metaphilosophy, I wanted to read a quick quote out of this. I can probably, actually, you know what? Yeah, let me do it. So let's assume here for a second we're all on a ship, okay? And while on the ship, we're on a cruise. Oh, let's see, David's got a question. Here's a question about rationality. Stryper released an album a while ago called Goddamn Evil, okay, and got quite a bit of backlash from many Christians, taking God's name in vain, so forth. All right. I'll wait for that. It looks like he's still typing.
Yes, he couldn't squeezing everything in one comment.
Yeah, I'll come back to that, David, because I see you're still typing it. So anyway, we're on a ship, right? So while we're on the deck, all right, we're all on a cruise somewhere, okay? And all of a sudden, no matter what you're doing, you hear somebody shout, "Man overboard." So we rush up to the top deck, and we see somebody grab a life preserver from a nearby bulkhead and rushes with it toward the railing. Suddenly, he comes to a stop and hesitates a moment. To our astonishment, he turns, retraces his steps, and replaces the life preserver, calmly proceeding step by step as the region of the incident slips away. First out of reach, then out of sight. Puzzled and chagrined, we turn to the individual and ask why he broke off the rescue attempt. So the response runs as follows. Of course, throwing that life preserver was my first instinct, as my behavior clearly showed. But then some ideas from my undergraduate epistemology course came to mind and convinced me that it made no sense to continue. Intrigued, we asked for more details and received the following response. Consider what we actually knew. All we could see was that something like a human head was bobbing out there in the water, but the visibility was poor. It could have been an old mop or a lady's wig stand. The noises we took for distant shouts, well, they could have been no more than the pulsing of the engines or the howling of the wind. There was simply no decisive evidence that it was actually a person out there. And then I remembered William Clifford's classic dictum. So for those that you don't know, says that it is wrong always in every way to believe anything upon insufficient evidence. So why act on a belief that there actually was a human in danger out there when the evidence for any such belief was clearly insufficient? And why carry out a rescue attempt when you do not accept that someone actually needs rescuing? So Resh goes on to say, look, obviously something went wrong here. And that's the problem with skepticism, is that sometimes it takes things so far to the extreme that all of a sudden we lose touch of what we know to be true. And the question we have to ask ourselves with skepticism is, what level of justification do we need for believing something, for accepting something? Which is hence where JTB comes in, all right? Now, you don't have to use the explanation or the model of JTB. JTB refers to justified true beliefs, all right? So what philosophers, ergo epistemologists, those who study knowledge, and as a subdiscipline of philosophy, have long tried to figure out is, what is this model for knowledge? How do we know when we have actual knowledge of something? And so JTB was a model for trying to explain this. Now, it's come under fire in, I don't know, since the 1960s when Gettier wrote his paper, and since. And so not everyone is crazy about it. The point here is that if we're going to hold to being justified our beliefs, how much of a strength do we need in justification? All right. Now, the way we get justification from things are different. Evidentialists will say that, you know, you don't need much, and I'm fully on board with that. And you have different branches of epistemology, internalism, externalism, and all kinds of different. Hey, thanks, Radical Love. You know, all kinds of different things going on there. Okay, but in the simplest form, justification, okay, is nothing more than having some sort of evidence that shows that our belief is true. Okay, so for instance, most would say the correspondence theory here provides quite a bit in terms of justification, that I have a belief that this is a book, and the book says metaphilosophy. Erika, can you see it?
Yes.
Okay, so I have two forms of confirmation there. I have my own senses that I can trust, all right, because generally speaking, they're fairly reliable. And secondly, Erika says that she confirms it. Now, of course, you can start to get pretty radically skeptical. In other words, you can do what Descartes sort of did, where he says, where Descartes would say stuff like,
maybe you're dreaming.
Yeah, maybe I'm dreaming, or maybe I'm a brain in a vat of chemicals, or I'm in the matrix, right? And there are different answers to questions like that. But you know, the point here in all of this is that, you know, justification for our beliefs should be fairly simple. And so typically when we get too far extreme with what we want to hold for justification, that's whereby things get really crazy in terms of trusting our beliefs. You have anything you want to throw in there?
And this can be really useful in apologetics, right? Because if you spoke to skeptic people, they probably ask you, how do you know God exists? How can you believe in the Bible? Then if you give an answer or two, they'll say, how do you know that is true? And if you really don't know this system, then they can really make you start to wonder if you don't have a good reason to believe what you believe. But if you know this system, then you can be confident, not only for your own sake, but also you can share that I believe because of this reason, and it's a good reason because of this. It passes these tests, right? Yeah. So I love that we have lots of comments going in the chat, and I cannot tell which one's question or not. So why don't we just like let the chat go and then take a question break at, you know, every once in a while, then read all the questions together. That way we get to answer questions.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure who's asking each other, who's asking us.
Yeah, I see a couple. I know Roxby threw out a question there.
Thank you so much, everybody, for moderating the chat and helping other thinkers. You guys are awesome.
Yeah. So can you trust the situation to God? This is where prayer is the absolute best thing. And yeah, I would agree. Sometimes you just got to give things over to God and go, boom. I'm not sure if that was in relation to, I know that you've got another conversation going on there, Roxby, so that could be in relation to that. Let me see here. I know, I don't know if...
and if this is your first time here, I'm glad you're here, and please feel free to ask questions now.
So then, Corinth said, hyperskepticism is frightfully impractical. That's right, and it's always good to remember the possibilities of being mistaken, and that's a great point, Chandler, and or Corinth's brother. And then you know, to keep in mind the possibilities of being mistaken, but it's not always good to substitute them for probabilities. And
otherwise, everything is, you know,
right.
How do we know anything at all?
Right, exactly. And some level of skepticism is good. That's healthy. I'm not saying just believe anything and everything with a sort of credulity that is just like, oh yeah, it's all good, I'll believe whatever. At all. Don't think we should do that. Some level of skepticism is healthy. It's just that hyper skepticism, if I can use that word, it takes it to an extreme whereby we would say, yeah, that's not rational. And as Brother Corns pointed out, it's unlivable. And that's just it. When people start espousing that sort of hypercritical skepticism, you sort of kind of go, well,
yeah.
Do you really live that way every
you kind
day-to-day
of
life?
Get it's bias, right? Because they don't have the same standard for everything. So
yeah, and I'm not even just talking about Christianity here. I'm talking about philosophers or people that study philosophy that do that.
Yes, and I was talking to this atheist person, and I don't mean to pick on atheists. It can be Christian, atheist, anybody. Yeah. But we are talking about how do we know this, how do we know that, and we go back and forth. I give my reason. I have this reason for believing this. How about you? What do you think about this question? And they say, well, I don't have a reason, but I still think, it's more likely. So you kind of see the, bias, and it can happen to everybody, Christian, atheist, anybody. And
so Willie has a question, and Radical Love had him put a Q in there for a question, and then we'll take a couple more if you guys have any, and I'll answer Willie's. So Willie, it will depend on if it's in self-defense or not. All right, that's going to be my answer. For those of you guys that don't know, he says, do I get a pass on murder if the person is truly evil? It also depends on your job description. But generally speaking, it depends on what you really mean.
So much goes into questions sometimes. So, but anyway, so Radical Love said put the Q, big capital letter Q before question to us, and that will help it easy for us to see that it's a question. So that maybe you can catch that. If you miss it, feel free to post more than once. And okay.
So but generally speaking, no, we don't.
So
unless it's your job to do that, like mine was in the military, whereby I just dispatch.
Yes. So we're gonna have question time later again.
Yep.
Back to the topic.
All right. So back on it. So, so anyway, the deal with justification, really, guys, is that we want to be. We want to hold to a sort of certain level of justification that is rational. And most of the time, the correspondence theory will really hold. In other words, what I mean by that is the correspondence theory in its simplest form really says that truth is that which corresponds to reality. Okay, so again, going back to that book illustration, I saw that it was a book. Erika saw that it was a book. I mean, it's really that simple. All right, obviously other things, justification can sort of get a little more complicated, but for the most part, I mean, it really is that simple. The Gettier problem sort of tried to throw out a monkey wrench in the works and sort of get people to doubt whether or not they had justification. But the problem with it is, generally speaking, it's not only non-livable, that the Gettier problem is actually, if I were to try to use it as an illustration, you guys will see right away, people would say, no, baloney. I won't let you get away with that. Here's what I mean. All right, this is, we used this in our last discussion. I'll use it again real quick, this illustration. So Erika and I are driving in a car, and we've got Willie with us, and we're driving along down the road. Roxby's there, a bunch of people are with us, and I go, hey, look, guys, a sheep. You guys go, where? I go, out there in the field. And come to find out, it's not a sheep at all. It's a wolf with a sheep costume on, who's looking for a sheep. He's trying to hunt it and trick the sheep.
Sneaky.
Right. The sheep is actually hiding behind a rock behind the wolf. It's the only sheep in the field other than the fake sheep, the faux sheep, right?
So there's a wolf and there's a sheep.
And there's a sheep.
It's a reality.
Right. That's the reality. Okay. So what happened? This is actually a Gettier problem pseudo illustration.
Is the wolf.
Right. All you see is the wolf. That's the only thing any of us can see. So what happens, though, all of a sudden as we're driving, everyone's looking out the window, is that you see a sheep pop out from behind the rock, and we're like, what? And then we see the wolf turn around to get it, and the sheep costume falls off, and of course we all laugh, and whatever happens next happens, right? Depending on how sadistic you are. But here's the point. If y'all started laughing at me and go, aha, Sean, you got tricked, and I said, no, I said there was a sheep in the field, so I was right. You guys would say, no, that's not right. And how so? Well, because you would say immediately and intuitively that what you were pointing at, the wolf in the sheep's clothing, is what you meant by there's a sheep. So just because there happened to be a sheep somewhere else in the field doesn't justify your position. And that's what Gettier problems do, is that people are sort of the lucky dunce. They're accidentally correct.
Accidentally right.
Right. And so
not by what you meant.
Right. If that's really what you meant. Right. And it looks because
you didn't really know that there actually was another sheep. I mean, sheep-like
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sheep other than the fake sheep is what I mean.
Yeah.
There was. You didn't know about the existence of the actual sheep. So.
Yeah. So, you know, you got to you got to take these kinds of things into consideration, that how when you start thinking of these kinds of problems is how realistic is this? Is this livable? How would anyone really treat this? There's 3 tests for truth. Now, there's not 3 methods of truth. The correspondence is the most accepted one, but then there's tests for truth, which include pragmatism, where if you don't take it too forcefully or literal, it can work. And what I mean by that is when somebody starts giving a position, the first thing I tend to do is look at, was that livable? Can that philosophical method really be livable? If not, then, you know, I just don't put a lot of credence in it. I think too often we all live in sort of the hypothetical sometimes in these different areas, so to speak. So yeah. Anyway, any questions on JTB?
Yes, questions.
Any questions on JTB at all?
Please.
Pragmatism.
Capital Q in beginning.
Yes. So Brother Corns asks, pragmatism and correspondence theories. So you've got correspondence, coherence, and pragmatism. In the past, these 3 were entertained as actual methods of truth. The problem with coherentism is that you run into a regress issue where you have an infinite circularity that becomes problematic. In other words, this is true. Well, how do I know it's true? Well, because of that thing over there. Okay, well, how do I know that's true? Well, because of this thing over here, because of this thing, because of this thing. And coherence usually says in some way or another that there is a web of beliefs that we have, and that each one justifies another, but you just infinitely run around chasing your tail, sort of justifying one belief to the next. Oh, Roxby, that's an awesome question, sister. And let me answer that, and Brother Corns, I'll continue on with what I was saying.
Yes, the question is, how would it be a good beginner book for philosophy? And I think Sean's gonna get them for you.
So I will tell you all right now that I absolutely love these authors. James?
Yes, please go ahead. Go ahead. I was gonna say that we have so many book recommendations, and not all of them are available. However, sometimes you can get them like in your local library. And if you haven't checked out already, your local library might have Hoopla service or Overdrive service where you can read these books digital version, and that can help you a lot. You know, you can check it out to see if it's helpful first of all, but also you get access so many resources, right? So yeah, I recommend checking out your local library for this, definitely.
So if you're only going to get one book on philosophy, because you're just kind of interested, but maybe you don't want to break the bank with it, this is a pretty good book. So this is let you hold that up. Philosophy: A Christian Introduction. Although, to be honest with y'all, you don't have to be a Christian to use this at all. It's not like James K. Dew or the other author, Paul Gould, which are both brilliant philosophers in their own right, are really giving anything in there that a non-believer would object to. All right. And to be honest with y'all, if you're not aware already, philosophy, for the most part, really, for the longest time, up until I always forget the name of the skeptical philosopher.
Which one?
Wiped away the sea with a sponge. Who is it that? I'll think of it in a minute.
Did he write this poem?
Yeah, I'll think of the philosopher in a minute. But
I almost remember the poem.
Not Kant, but anyway, yeah, I'll think of the philosopher in a minute. But up until him, most philosophers were believers. Most of them, and throughout philosophy, by the way, guys, generally most of the big questions are about God. So it's not like
it's an important question, right?
Yeah, so it's not like that's it's just foreign to philosophy to be talking about theism and God and whatnot. All right, and Nietzsche. That's it, Brother Corns. Tom Nagel is fun, Roxby, yeah. And Nietzsche was the one that I was thinking of. And it's been said that Nietzsche is the first atheist philosopher, big name atheist philosopher. I tend to scratch my head and go, I don't know if that is officially true, so don't anyone quote me on that. So, there you go. Thank you, Roxby. And then this one, the Philosopher's Toolkit. This is one that I'm going to be covering, Brother Corns, and anyone who's interested in the Patreon thing. I'm going to be doing a whole series on I'm going to be using this as a textbook on our Patreon channel. So anyone that's subscribed to that.
This one, you can read a little bit at the time, right?
This one is absolutely brilliant. Okay, you won't learn about the whole field of philosophy from this one. This is just different tools of philosophy, different methods. Like I was saying, philosophy is a method. This is brilliant because not only does the authors give the tools and explain them, but they give you a little historical background. But it's really practical. And I'll get back to the pragmatic thing in just a second, Corinth, I didn't forget. This other one by James
How do we know?
K. Dew also, all right, and Mark Foreman. Most of this is already in this one. All right, I got this one on epistemology years ago, four years ago, something like that, when I was first getting into epistemology. And this is brand new. I think this just came out this year. And so if this one's a great introduction to epistemology. I found nothing this simple yet.
Let's show the author name here.
Yeah, so the Philosopher's Toolkit, I'll be giving some of this information out on the Patreon channel too, because there's a few other books that are like toolkit, heuristic type books for philosophy. And my thing is, you guys, Erika and I have probably over 100 philosophical books in our library right now. Yeah, now keep in mind, guys, also that philosophy has different fields, subdisciplines. So you have philosophy proper, right? The history of philosophy, metaphilosophy, all these different, just that. Then you've got metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, right? Dentology. So these are all sub-disciplines of philosophy. Oh, we will, Radical Love. I'll put those in the description box. Good call. Yeah, sorry guys, I have to redo the whole description box anyway because of the
we had to make this link at the last minute because of technical difficulty, but when we are done, we will do that. Yes, so these three are recommended out of those 100, so they must be really good, right?
Next Tuesday, yeah. Next Tuesday, we're doing a live stream on our library and some of our favorite books from there, and I'm going to try, y'all, to shoot it from my phone so that I can bring the phone downstairs so we can, Erika and I can.
Yes, Sean wanted to show his library, but he shot in this orientation instead of doing this. So I'm like, Sean.
Got to redo it. So I need her help for the technical stuff.
You know what I mean? This orientation. So
yeah.
So he's, I'm gonna do it again.
Yeah, rather brilliant, I know. So yeah, and that's just the philosophy side of it. If you guys check out our oldest videos, which are on memorizing the Book of Romans, those were shot in our library. Every book in there is theology based, biblically based. So we've got, I think, 1,000 print books, and then I've got almost 9,000 in my Logos library. And years ago, I gave away probably 1,000 when I switched over to Logos and regretted it because I love, if I'm going to sit down and read a book, I want to print book.
I like the physical book. I like physical book too.
Yeah. So Tuesday. Oh, that reminds me. Before I forget, guys, and we'll get back into answer. I'll get back into answering Lawrence. I know. I'm sorry to keep the suspense. Got to be killing you on the pragmatic approach. Saturdays, we're going to try to bump the time earlier. Eastern Standard Time, like 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturdays. How does that sound for everyone for live stream, live events?
If we go live on Saturday, what time is good for you?
Yeah, you guys.
Please don't forget to tell us what time zone that is, because we might get confused about that. Because there was a thinker that said this hour is a little bit too late, and I want it to be a good time for all thinkers. So
yeah. And
let us know.
I agree with you, Corinth. Print books are just, there's something about holding the paper and turning them. It's been sitting down, and I love pastor I worked for years. He would Pastor Messer would always hold his Bible like this, and I've gotten so used to when I study holding my books like that I don't have a lot of hard books either, hardcover.
You wanted to ask if 2 p.m. is acceptable. Was that your question, Sean? Saturday? Did you say
Saturday time? I was saying 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So
if we did that, it's a good time for you, bad time for you. If it's bad time, what time is acceptable for you? We'd love to know.
I agree, Radical Love, and thank you, Radical Love, for mentioning the watch, like, subscribe, and hit that thumbs up. We appreciate that, really. And yeah, the print's the way to go. And yeah, Rox, I'll look at that. So 7 a.m. Pacific time would be 4 hours ahead for us. So. Yeah, exactly, Rox. That Roxby says, Kindle books you usually get a little cheaper, particularly, and I'll tell y'all, books like this, some of my philosophical ones. I don't recommend these out, not because they're not good. Okay, Corns, well, we can make it later. I'm trying to avoid bumping into other brothers in the faith that are doing, or sisters that are doing broadcasts as well on Saturday. And I realize some of y'all may want to go out and do stuff Saturday night, so I don't want to interfere and let everyone be able to join us. So 10 a.m. East Coast. Okay. But a lot of these it's amazing. If I had this book in paperback, this one didn't cost this much, but some of my philosophy books, $150 for the book because of the scholarship going into them. And then the paper version will be like $40, which is ridiculous for the difference of the hardcover. So, that's always something I try to do when I can.
Yeah, and let's not forget audiobook. Who likes audiobook? I love audiobook.
Yeah, Corns. And yeah, I've used Kindle, guys. I don't hate it. I love it. I will say I love it when I'm citing stuff for school, the Logos and that reference work.
Is it useful or what?
Oh man, then because it automatically does a footnote for you.
Right.
Yeah.
The writing has changed so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, getting back to the.
Likes audiobook, yay! Okay, getting.
No, you're fine. Go ahead. Did you have anything else you wanted to say? Audiobooks. Oh, that's another one we do. Audiobooks are awesome. I agree, brother.
Yes, and you can get audiobooks from local library as well.
Yeah, that was
awesome.
Our local library has an online part, and Erika discovered this. So you can rent audiobooks. They have tons of stuff you don't have to pay for, but I buy.
Do you guys want me to make like a tutorial on how to set it up and use it? Would that be something useful for you? And I also found Hoopla, and I also found this subscription service that does, I think, not only audiobook, but also PDF version of the book, ebook, stuff like that. Do you want me to check it out and tell you how it's like? If that's useful, if that's something you want to see, let me know in comment, and I'm going to consider making that video for you if there's enough requests for that. Because we have lots of bookworms, and as we know, we cannot get a hold of every single books when we want, right? So this is service like this is sort of on
a different topic, because I know I'm going to cover this next week. But let me give you all one recommendation here while I'm thinking about it. Audible, for those of you that do the Amazon one, for like $20 or a 1 credit, whatever, right? Modern Intellectual Tradition, from Descartes to Derrida, the great courses. Descartes to Derrida. I'll put it in the description for you guys. That'll take a while to type out. I realize it's blurry. I'm sorry. It's because it's a screen. But it's great courses. This gentleman just recently that does this, Brother Kuhn, he narrated a debate between, I think it was William Lane Craig and somebody else. And he's a great guy. Excellent audio series. This is incredible. Rich. But it's cool because he's he doesn't lose you. So if you have no philosophical experience, it's a great history of philosophy course. 7 or 8 of the church fathers on audiobook. Yeah, audiobooks are awesome. For those
of you who love audiobooks, have you tried listening like 1.5 speed or 2 times speed to save time? I do that. It's a little trick for you who wants to read or listen to lots of books.
And I agree. Radical Love, I do the same thing. I take notes in my books too, although I try to be neat, but that's just underlying, but I'll actually go through and take copious amounts of notes, sometimes arguing with the author. That's not right. But I do it in pencil though, so that if I ever, I don't like to sell my books, but if I ever have to,
or give it to friends,
then they can erase it, or I can erase it if I need to.
I have a friend who used to write this note on an index card. He would keep an index card inside the book, like a bookmark. I thought that's kind of neat system.
How do you say that?
Yeah, like that. Right. Oh, I found this interesting. I found on this page, stuff like that. Yeah. So that's.
I should start doing that because I already use these little tabs, signature markers. Sometimes they're called, to mark pages for school, and then that's a great idea. I can just put those in there.
You guys understand what they mean, right? So like on page 15, the author said this, and this line I liked, so you just write that down. And so that way, you think about, oh, I read something good in this book. Where was it? What was it? And you just get the index card, and it's right there for you. Oh yeah, that was it. I was smart. So saves your time, right?
Yeah, Corrence, I am looking for an actual paragraph in here on the pragmatic approach. and I'm struggling to find it. I may just go from memory, but I really wanted to quote Brother Dew here because it was a great little paragraph on pragmatic approach, test for truth. It's justification. I'm not going to find it. So basically, what with pragmatism, you have to be careful. So what happens with the pragmatic approach, okay, is that's where you can end up with philosophical methods or doctrines like, I must be getting tired.
Too late for you too.
Yeah, it's too late for all of us, right? For postmodernism, right? This is pragmatic approach that whatever works for me, which is the pragmatic approach, that's what I'm going to take to be true. I mean, think about it. That's postmodernism in and of itself, and that's the main objection to pragmatism as a form of truth, okay, as a source. However, if it's a test for truth, that's different. In other words, we look at it and we say, is this livable? All right, now that sort of sounds like, well, if we're talking about something being true, it just is true, and that goes back to the correspondence theory, which is what most people hold to. All right, so that's sort of the difference. And then what I'll try to do, Corinth, is read up on pragmatism again, because to be honest with you, there's not really much to it. I was kind of hoping to find it here so I could read a little of it. Do you have anything you want to say? Maybe I can try to find it while... No? I'm trying to stall. Oh, there we go. Coherentism.
I'm just remembering what we learned before as I'm listening to you.
Okay, so coherentism, let me see. So pragmatism's got to be... Nope, that's coherentism as in justification. I don't know where it is, guys. Well, it's all right. Indirect realism, no. Perceptions and whatnot. Yeah, I'll find it, and I'll study up on it again, Corinth, and that way I can answer you a little bit better. But
another video idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea with pragmatism.
Yes.
And I know what'll happen. I'll get off the video here and I'll find it as soon as I get done, right? So,
that's how it goes.
There it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that we don't have as much distractions, are there any other questions you guys have about any of that?
Did we miss anybody's questions?
Or did we miss anyone's questions? Or anything the like? I'm happy to answer any of them. It can be about anything at this point related to anything apologetic, theological, or philosophical. Yeah. I'm trying to imitate the... Oops, that's a sign language for something that...
Radical love, just love you, sis. I love you too, radical love.
Yeah, you guys are awesome, by the way. We really do.
Awesome.
Love all y'all.
We love this interaction. Q&A time. Did we get everybody's question?
Let me see. Oh, and you know what? I do have something to throw out if you guys know. Are you able to share the topic and maybe a resource before live streams? Yeah, absolutely.
So smart. Right?
That's a great question, Rox. We struggle. We have a platform that we use, Faith Life, and most folks aren't really interactive on there, and so I sort of go, all right, let me try to find another platform. I guess we could do another Facebook. I'm trying to think of somewhere we can. Oh, awesome! Great to see you, Nate. All right, keep going, and I'll be able to join soon. All right, well then I'll wind it up. But yeah, that's a great idea, Roxby, and yes, so we could prepare and look at the topic a little before. And I'm having a hard time thinking of questions on the fly. I don't blame you. Sometimes I have a hard time thinking of this stuff, and I take copious amounts of notes, so I understand that completely. Yes. So yes, let me know what kind of platform y'all want us to use. We could go with the Faith Life platform. Erika can email more invites. Majesty differentiating between its as a methodology, ontology has helped somewhat. I've heard Jordan Peterson employing it profusely. Majesty, I'm not sure differentiating between it. Oh, I think you're talking about pragmatism. A modernist. Oh, the autocorrect must have changed the word. That's why.
Yes, many things are accessing from phone, so.
It's funny you say that, Corns. I watched. Okay, Rox. We'll email y'all what platform we do, because we could do Facebook, but of course, if we get deplatformed eventually, and that's why we're moving so hard to raise money to do everything from the website. And it will be fully functional soon too. Maybe that's what we'll do, is create some sort of back end. Can we create like just a blog area that's password protected on the website?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll do that. That way it's on the website, and you guys will password protect an area for everybody.
Yes, I'm working on making the website for everybody.
Yeah. I would do it on Patreon, but then people have to pay to get that information. I don't want to have to restrict folks like that. That's not necessary. So we can do it on the website. Jordan Peterson, I watched a video where he had a philosopher. Let me see if I can find the gentleman's name. And he was interviewing the philosopher, and the philosopher they were talking about postmodernism, ironically, and criticizing it. But you don't use Facebook either, Radical Love? I barely ever use it, except to keep in touch with my military buddies.
Yeah, I use it to keep in touch with the friends too, friends and family.
We do use it to help another apologist, I won't say who. We go on and help moderate his stuff.
He's rocking it too.
Oh, he's killing it. Yeah, and being that we're not really all that busy with our channel right now, I'm happy to help the individual out as much as we can. Stephen Hicks, PhD. Y'all should check out his website, by the way. It is awesome. Philosopher. Nice guy. And Jordan Peterson's interviewing Stephen Hicks, and what's the topic? I'm pretty sure it's postmodernism. So ironically, but I know what you're saying, Corrence. I'm totally on board with what you're saying there. Yeah, keep up with church peeps. Move this over. It got moved a little. Oh, you watched that too, Corrence? Yeah. It's funny because I really wanted to hear the philosopher, and Jordan Peterson kept jumping in. I was like, no, I want to hear the Mr. Hicks. Not that I don't like Jordan Peterson. So a couple of things before I forget. There was something that we ran into that I wanted to share with y'all. And actually, Corrence, you might have been on there with me. I don't remember. I was on somebody else's YouTube channel in the chat, and there was somebody saying that they were talking about the kalam one of the arguments. It wasn't a kalam. It was intelligent design, I think,
okay.
What's the formal name of the argument?
Teleological.
Thank you.
Argument?
Yeah.
Yes.
And some kid gets on and goes, "Oh, Sean Carroll refuted that," and I went, and we all were like, "Wait, what? He refuted it?" Now, so just for reference here, refuting an argument means that's it. It's done. It's dead in the water.
It doesn't mean he didn't agree with
right. So,
or he wasn't convinced.
Right. So several of us got on there. We were like, I don't think you understand what I don't think that word means what you think it means, right? And so his defense of it though was, well, awesome, Nate. So the young man's defense of his position or argument was that the kalam, or the teleological argument, excuse me, was refuted because William Lane Craig didn't respond to something Sean Carroll said. That's not the way an argument gets refuted. All right. So
it depends on this one debate.
Right. So
it doesn't work like that, right?
Now, how is this relevant, right? So I'm not airing out my frustrations of things that I run into on YouTube, although I'm sure that's fun. But the reason I'm bringing it up is to let you guys know something. That, look, if you ever get on one of these chats, and you guys may realize this, but I forget this from time to time, and I just want to encourage everybody on here. And you're in a chat and you're discussing something with somebody, and you lose a debate, all that means, or a discussion or whatever, all that means is that you lost a discussion. It doesn't mean anything else. Same thing with a philosopher. Just because William Lane Craig loses a debate, which I can't think of one that he has lost, but even if he has, okay, so what? It doesn't mean that the arguments or the Christianity or anything else, and same for the atheist, that anything has been refuted or that anything has been demolished. It just means that somebody lost an argument or a debate. That's all it means. And which one, Radical Love?
I think this one, right? Philosopher's Topic.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that the one you say you're going to use?
That one we're definitely going to use.
But Sean was recommending other than this one.
There's some other ones we're going to use, but this one will be
this one for sure.
Primary, because I'm going to be writing my own book eventually, guys, wherein it's a heuristic or systematic philosophy book. So that's something that we're going to be using. So for now, as I'm sort of building up to that, in other words, it's philosophy to use as tools in theology. So that's the big reason for it, not just to do philosophy for the sake of philosophy, which can be fun. I mean, don't get me wrong, you can waste your entire life doing philosophy for the sake of philosophy. Well, not waste, but you could spend your entire life. I love philosophy. I need more. But you know, theology is my first love, and so I need more philosophy. More. It's like crack. All right, for clothes.
Like how you are with beautiful Bible.
Oh yeah.
I can't get enough.
I've got several real leather Bibles. So you're welcome, Radical Love. So where was I going with any of that? So getting back into the point here that I was making is that, look, if just know that if you can't answer somebody, hey, love and light, blessings. If you can't answer something in a debate or in a discussion, don't feel bad. And I know you're sitting there thinking, why would I feel bad? Nah, I don't care. But when you're in that situation, you're arguing with that goofball in a chat somewhere online, and people are just being belligerent to be belligerent. Boy, for me anyway, I don't know about you, you're so calm and collected.
People rude?
Yeah, you handle it well.
Because if I let every single one of rude behavior bother me, I don't have enough, energy to go around. And everybody have important things to do, right? We all have to focus on what's most important. So I feel like I cannot, let my energy go to this so-called troll.
Yeah.
I get that it's annoying. It is annoying. But you kind of have to pick your battle. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. And so
that's how I feel.
If you lose an argument, Christianity didn't fall apart. The what is up, Dinu? Nate's here, Dinu's here, Radical Love's here, Roxby, Corinth, everybody, love and light. Man, it's a party up here. So the thing is that the reason I'm saying this, right, is it's real easy with what all of us do. We're on these different channels, and it's real easy to get frustrated, and you're like, man, and you just feel like you're getting poo-pooed on, as Nate would say, right? So, but just know this, that no matter what happens to you when you're doing apologetics, right, when you win, lose, arguments, whatever, that Christians stand behind you, and everyone on this channel does, right? And that I say that, y'all, just to let you know that we support you, because again, it gets real easy when you get the snot kicked out of you in an argument, you don't know how to respond, or you just can't get through to somebody who's being, thick. That there it is, Nate. Thank you, sir. He is listening. So, that when that kind of stuff happens and somebody's poo-pooing on you like that, right, in the comment section, that just know that, number one, even if you can't respond, doesn't mean that Christianity's falling apart, or that the actual argument, whether it's the Kalam, the teleological, something else that you've created yourself, doesn't mean it's been refuted. It just means that you didn't, for whatever reason, were unsuccessful at presenting it.
It just means the person didn't accept that. Maybe you did a very, very good job, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes the person is just not ready to accept, even if you have the good argument. So that's just, and we know that, right?
And if y'all remember the last live stream on, I think it wasn't last week, it was the week before, when we tried to have, John on. We'll have him back now that the internet's working. And we were talking about evidence, right? And so what you have to remember is that evidence in a court of law needs a relatively low strength. Even people don't understand, beyond a reasonable doubt. I'm working on this paper for school right now, all about evidence, particularly applying it to apologetics. Beyond a reasonable doubt does not mean that you have to prove something with absolute certainty. That's not what it means. It doesn't mean that you are required to. I'm trying to open up the paper I'm working on. I'll read you a quote from something I'm working on.
You probably heard this one.
I don't know, Corinth. Go ahead.
What did he say?
He said, how do you even send people messages through YouTube? I've been trying to figure that out, Corinth, so I can do it. And I asked Erika, she's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so do you want to send message to another YouTuber that has
you can put messages on your, I've seen it, where guys like capturing Christianity. Yeah, Cameron is good about using that, and some of the other guys.
Ask young people.
Right, okay. Asking people.
So this is an old-fashioned way, but if the person has an account on the channel, sometimes I go to the about page and look up their contact information, like their website or something. Then I contact them there, but I know that's probably not what you're looking for. I think you can tag people, right, on YouTube, no?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff.
I think the person's attention.
I know what Corrence is asking here. Here's the argument. All right, let me read this to you guys because I want to make the point of how strong does evidence actually need to be here, and people have some really ridiculous beliefs about the strength of evidence, and particularly with.
Have you heard ACS say like a bigger claim requires bigger evidence, something like that? Have you guys heard that one?
Oh, bigger. Oh, yeah, that's Hume's big thing.
Yeah.
Although it potentially came about before that.
I do hear people saying that therefore God is a big claim, therefore it just requires really, 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 really big evidence. Otherwise, I won't be convinced.
Yeah.
Or same thing for miracles, stuff like that.
So you can see it. I'm just looking for. You can keep going, Pumpkin.
Yeah. So I think that is it's good to know what is really reasonable. This is a useful document. Sean is pulling up.
Slip and fall. Yeah, that's to get in. Tripartite JTB. Sorry guys, I'm just looking for this. I wanted to quote it to you guys. Okay, so. Okay, so beyond a reasonable doubt, John Warwick Montgomery, in a book he put out about defending the gospel in legal style, said this. All right, he said in describing, this is a quote from courts, explaining what beyond a reasonable doubt is. So instructions that define proof beyond a reasonable doubt, as in the words of corpus juris secundum, such proof as precludes every reasonable hypothesis except that which it tends to support, and is proof which is wholly consistent with the guilt of the accused, and consistent with the whoops, something went wrong there. Oh, it didn't save my edit. And inconsistent with any other rational conclusion. So, oh, that stinks because I fixed a whole bunch of stuff here. So, corpus juris secundum, in other words, seems to be appealing to abduction, guys, or inference to the best explanation. What that means, would you check? Hey guys, if you can still hear me, let me know. I want to make sure that the stream didn't die. Sometimes it froze up again. Nope. Okay, Corrence is there. So let me break this down here. So inference to the best explanation is a method for evaluating a hypothesis, and ironically, attorneys are trained in it, as well as obviously philosophers, historians. Thanks, Corrence. And so it's something we actually use every day. All it is a way to compete 2 or 3 opposing hypotheses to figure out which one
is the strongest.
Thanks, Brother Nate. Right? Yeah, which hypothesis is the strongest? And so the methodology is there. You've probably all heard J. Warner Wallace talk about it. Potentially Ravi or William Lane Craig or others, Lycona or Habermas. And so the point here is that inference to the best explanation is something that we just use to evaluate things. So listen to this corpus juris secundum again. Okay, this is explaining beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the highest standard of proof that you need in a court of law to prove somebody guilty. All right, it's such proof that precludes every other reasonable hypothesis. So if there's any other hypothesis out there, in other words, that beyond a reasonable doubt says that the evidence that's provided and the theory that's put forth precludes everything else, and is consistent with the evidence, and is inconsistent with any other rational conclusion. So in other words, all it's saying is that this is the best explanation. This is legal, the legal definition for what the ceiling you need to hit for beyond a reasonable doubt. Rock speed dinner? Oh, ravioli. Gotcha, Corrence. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because if the thing, the criteria that is required to sentence a man or woman, human being, when I say man, to death, okay, is such that that's the standard that you need to meet, why in the world are we saying that we need some higher standard of greater, what was the point that you were making?
Yeah, bigger claim requires bigger evidence, stuff like that.
Yeah.
it might not be word for word, but that's the
No,
idea, right?
Yeah, that's the idea, and that's incorrect. Now, one other thing to note in that is that lots of philosophers will say no. Even Dr. McGrew, Tim McGrew, who's an evidentialist, says, well, he sort of agrees with that statement. He qualifies it and says, no, relevant evidence, okay? I just want to point this out, that it's relevant evidence. There's no strength that's not even quantifiable anyway. As if something requires some sort of vast amounts of evidence that's unavailable. That's just moving the goalpost.
Right.
So hopefully that makes sense.
Right. And it's not even very clear. Like what would you say is being evidence? Is it something that convinces you personally? Do you get to decide?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, if y'all haven't subscribed yet, please do. It really helps us. We're trying to move towards growing the channel and getting the word out. I'm going to try to get back into doing sermons. I've got a little bit of a break here. I'm going to be taken from school, sort of be midsummer, but it'll be nice to get back to seeing the family.
That'd be good.
RZIM, yes. Roxby, I think if you're asking me. Ravi, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, Ravi, I got you. Now I'm tracking on the conversation. Yeah, Ravi. Yeah, RZIM. Yeah, I mentioned Ravi. That's funny. Yeah, I actually took a course. Oh, thanks, Radical Love. We appreciate that. She says she could learn from us all night. Appreciate that. Well, we may go all night, depending on how long the kids will. We've got the older ones are watching the younger ones. I think
it's that much.
And I know how it is too. Sometimes when I'm on Vocab's channel, I don't want them to get off because I'm having such a great time talking to everyone in the chat. It's you're like a family, and you get to see and talk to and hear everybody. So, just as a quick review, y'all do remember that Ravioli Zachariah is name.
That's a cute name.
I like that.
I never thought
Ravioli
of that.
Zacharias. That's a great
nickname.
Did
you come up with that?
Nate did. Nate's hilarious.
That's so funny. That's cute.
Yeah.
Now I'm an ravioli.
Yeah, right. Well, one night we were in the chat talking about 80s TV shows on Vocab's channel. It was hilarious. Thank you, Love and Light. Appreciate the sub. Thank you so much. Yeah, trying to think. So any questions y'all have on anything? And again, it can be related to justification or any of that, or it can be Nate gets into the corner. His father-in-law used to call him ravioli. Really?
Really? Some people just do that.
Or is that just, yeah.
That's cute.
Yeah, the real question is, Nate, is she justified in believing that? Or are you justified in believing that? Yeah, we're fam, that's right. Yeah, it's funny because I was out, Eric and I were out doing something the other day, and I started talking about the 80s TV shows. And I was thinking about the conversation we were all having on the channel. You can say Nate's crazy. You can say it. Yeah. Any questions at all that you guys might have? Theology, philosophy, apologetics. I'm happy to entertain them. Biblical. I mean, anything related. I mean, I could talk forever about this kind of stuff too. It's fun when you have people that actually want to talk or listen. Because
yes, we love the chat section.
She might my sister. So anyway, I'm trying to think if there's anything else on this topic. Anything that you want to put out on the justification, JTB,
you
tripartite model?
Cover so much, and you know more than I do. You're good at this. Is your specialty, really. So I'm just here listening.
Who's blue? Dinu?
Oh, I think he's talking about how his name is changed. Is that what he's talking about?
Sure. True Blue Sister Dinu. Yeah. So anyway, let me think. I know that there were some discussions on God and time that John and I were talking about. I don't know if there's any questions you guys have on that, or anything that he and I were talking about the other night that you guys wanted to. Blue equals moderator. That makes sense.
Yeah,
so see a sea of blue on the screen. She's realized she's a mod. Yeah, I made all of y'all mods. That's just like mod. Nobody's causing trouble on this channel.
Yes. Nobody stand a chance, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, nobody stands a chance. Nate says, except the mods. That's right. Yet. Yeah. Nah. It's and listen, as if I've got y'all's attention there, moderating. This channel is for y'all, for Christians first and foremost. There's so many good. Let's give it time. There's so many good apologetic channels out there. I'm happy to have non-believers on, but if they're mouthing off, being rude, nasty, causing trouble, they give them the boot. I'd have no problem with that whatsoever, because if they're trolling, there's just I have no patience for it. Now, if they're just being they're just asking questions and pressing something, I'm fine with people disagreeing with me. I don't mind that at all. There's a saying that we have at Believing Thinkers, which is attack the argument, not the people. All right, that's actually logically fallacious anyway. So.
To attack people
instead
of argument. Yes, people from any belief, any backgrounds are welcome, but we just have to behave, right?
Yeah, Roxby says, don't worry, we'll put misbehaving Christians in the timeout too. Yeah, I was just thinking of the one gentleman who was making smart aleck comments to Erika.
He was bored. I don't know.
Yeah, oh, you missed it earlier, Nate. There's some guy making derogatory Asian comments to Erika.
Too bored on Saturday night?
Yeah, it's funny, Corns, because you're right. Sometimes it can be difficult to find somebody you can have a good, clean discussion with. There was one gentleman on here. If he ever comes back, I need to go respond to him now that I'm almost done with this last paper before I start writing a whole bunch of new papers.
Yeah, sometimes atheist people can be really interesting to talk to when they want to actually respect you and have an intellectual conversation. It can be a good experience. Right?
Yeah. And there was one gentleman, Dennis, who's super nice. He kind of started out making a comment that some people took the wrong way, but granted, I mean, the comment was a little bit
challenging.
I don't know what to say. Yeah, I get why people were reading it that way. I understand that. We kind of looked at the comment. We're like, what? Not the comment tonight, guys. We're talking about on another video in the comment section down below. So Roxby says, I have a good friend that's an atheist. We have really great discussions. Yeah, I tell you what, Rox,
right?
I've got a martial arts company that I've run for years. I don't really do much with anymore. We have a whole series of schools all around the country and overseas, and a lot of the guys involved are not Christians, and we have great conversations, and we respect one another. And
that's the key, right? Respect.
Yeah,
which is lacking so much these days.
These guys are not. This isn't Rex Kwon Do. This is the real deal. It's MMA, jiu-jitsu, other things where we're capable of hurting one another pretty bad, but we never argue with one another. Everybody's super nice. We train in firearms stuff, all kinds of stuff. A lot of us are former military, come from all different backgrounds, walks of life, and everybody's super cool with one another. And so it's possible. I just don't know why. I think it has to do with being online here. Oh yeah, okay. So the Corn says there's a gentleman. I won't read his name out loud on this, but it's pretty nice when he talks. And yeah, right, Erika. Respect is key, and love. That's it. Radical love.
Yeah, but I think people are so, I don't know, used to people not behaving themselves online anymore, that they just show up with this, they just already expect you to be mean to them too, so that's a shame. But we want this community to be a safe place, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have to feel that way. Yeah, you guys are awesome people.
And we don't mean the college campus safe place kind of thing, the cry closets and all that. But
more like we don't have to deal with that kind of.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, look, y'all should be able to get on here and talk about whatever you want theologically, and if we don't agree, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Atheist comes on, they don't agree, it doesn't matter as long as we're respectful. I'm Reformed. I'm not a determinist. Okay, so sometimes people confuse that, where they'll say you have to be a Calvinist and maybe a high form of Calvinist to be Reformed, and that's not true. The Reformation, there are a lot of branches of it that don't involve determinism or some forms of Calvinism, And yet, I have tons of friends, pastors, guys I went to school with, Reformed. We get along just fine.
Yeah.
For some reason, on the internet, though, and this kind of goes to what you were saying, that I've noticed this on the martial art channels we've had, Snowflakes and Safe Spaces. Yeah, that for some reason, because people don't see one another face to face, there seems to be this thing where we used to call them internet ninjas. These guys would challenge us to fights, and we finally got fed up with it, called some kid out on it. Hey, Air Church, konnichiwa, genki desu ka? I guess talking to you, but at any rate, it does happen, and going back to that last part is don't just know that in our community we have nothing but love for one another, and so if you're having that kind of yeah sorry, I'm reading the comments and talking at the same time. If what was I saying?
Let's see. We are talking about what was Sean talking about?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Important. The comments are more important anyway at this point. But
was it about comments online? Is that what we are talking about?
Yeah, sort of. And I got into Calvinism. And I was reading about Roxby's part. Right, I'm not a Calvinist.
So I think that even within Christian communities, where the two people agreeing on every single things, right?
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's totally okay.
I have worked quite a bit in ministry, y'all, over the years in physical. This is our first ministry where it's not a physical church, and they were talking about your church, but in good ways. That I've worked with at churches where we had, I don't know, how big was Trinity? We had 7,000 people. It was on 168 acres, right. Very large college, all the way down to nursery for infants. I mean, it was just ridiculously huge. And the staff there when I worked there was huge. I think we had 12 associate pastors and then more assistant pastors than the associate pastors. I was the researcher for the senior pastor. And that's awesome, Air Church. Yeah,
we're glad to have you here, Air Church.
Yeah, and the point is that we work on staff. I work with guys that were all walks of beliefs to some extent. Right. I mean, they couldn't be like oneness Pentecostals and work at a Trinitarian church, but people got along fine. Yeah, we weren't sitting around going, "Wait, what do you believe? You're a Calvinist? No, you're not allowed. We can't talk. You got to go over there. Yeah. You got to sit over there at that table." Or they they did it to me, straw man my argument and say, "Oh, you're an Arminian, even though I'm not. You go sit over there." That kind of thing. Yeah. We'd sit around. We'd have guys. We just like we're all joking around here and having a good time. And there's this disconnect, I think, where online, for some reason, that it's just until people get used to it, as it's still fairly new. I mean, it's not that new, but socially, when you look at compared to face-to-face interaction that humans have had over time, compared to the newness of this whole thing at the internet, that people are going to need some time. So, any questions at all, guys? Anything on again, theology, philosophy, apologetics? We can talk about the Bible if I have an answer to it. If not, I'll just pick a topic and go.
I want to ask thinkers, where did you guys find us?
Oh, yeah, it's a great question.
That's something I want to ask you guys. I know many of you probably found us when Sean was hanging out in somebody else's channel, perhaps. We have some awesome people here.
Yeah, we do. And don't forget to smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and subscribe if you haven't and you're enjoying it. Or if you don't enjoy it and you just want to come back and drive me up the wall, go right ahead.
Come back anyway, right?
From Vocab's channel, yeah. So D says Sean from Vocab's channel. Yeah. Through Vocab, okay.
Yeah. We love hanging out at his channel.
Yeah, I think Nate I met first hanging out with John over at What Do You Meme? And okay, Corinth, so I'll pick something. I don't want to pick something that's. Let me see. I heard y'all on Vocab's channel. What do you do, Kev? You updated on while on Lent. Okay, Rox. Yeah. How many nuns would a nunchuck chuck? Would nunchuck could chuck nuns?
Nate keeps the comment section, so interesting.
Oh yeah, and a big shout out to Nate and Corinth for their support on Patreon. I appreciate y'all. So all right, let me pick a topic then. I guess I'll go back to God and time because we sort of did that, but I know that not everyone was able to participate with that part in the section. And I'll say this too about God and time, and let me start with a little bit of a Nate is crazy, don't y'all believe him? I can't help but read the comments. So when it comes to God and time, is this that really most other theological positions pretty much revolve around God and time, guys. A lot of people don't realize this. I'm going to try to outline two of the positions, and just know that I'm not necessarily giving, this way is the right way and this way is the wrong way. And the reason for that, I hear this a lot where I see guys say stuff like, well, if my position is the Bible, and if you don't agree with me, you don't agree with the Bible. And I go, oh.
It should be kind of self-explanatory. Yeah, no. So you should be able to let, people decide.
Yeah. So, yeah. So the problem with that is that that's just simply not true. Anything in the Bible that anyone takes aside from reading the text, as soon as they say this is what it means, that's an interpretation. The interpretation might be right, the interpretation might be wrong. Either way, we want to be careful about how dogmatic we are. There's nothing wrong with having confidence in your position. It's just known as begging the question if you think that your conclusion is the only right conclusion. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's necessarily arrogant, because we all, as human beings, do this. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
About thinking that your conclusion is the only conclusion?
Yeah.
I actually belong to this online community of Christian ladies, and this happens all the time, where one lady asks questions about the Bible, or they'll say, "What do you think of this?" For example, I want to celebrate Christmas, but I don't know if it's okay. What do you guys think? And there are many people who think, well, my opinion is that it's not good to do that. And if you do that, you're not Christian, or you are evil, or, there's no way you could be Christian and celebrate Christmas. Strong opinion. Does that relate what you mean? That my opinion is the only way. If you don't have my opinion, you must be like really bad.
Yeah, you're a heretic or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, you could get that. I think it's just too strong of an opinion. There is a chance that a person is a new Christian or totally have reasonable interpretation of the Bible for a reason. Maybe, just maybe, the other person knows more about the Bible than you,
I know this is going to sound like snobbery, guys. Don't take this the wrong way, but I've been a pastor for...
Dogs like the cons.
Yeah, dogs. Go get the dog. No, I'm just kidding. But I started in the ministry in 96, 97. Started my theological education around then too. Had quite a bit of education, taught exegesis and Bible study methods at the college level. So it's hilarious to me when I see people saying, like this is the right interpretation, and sometimes it might be, it might genuinely be, but when they're so dogmatic, and I go, well, why do you think that? And then I realize they've not read anyone else's position on this.
Right. It's like, well, because it's a tradition, or it's the way my father taught me, or
whatever the reason is.
Or my favorite theologian sides with me, and I like him.
Yeah.
Or so.
Yeah. Or my favorite fallacy of logic. Well, the vast majority of the scholars agree with me. You go, really? Which ones? And in some cases that's actually true, but most of the time that's actually not, nor is it even probabilistically going to be possible. Scholars very rarely univocally agree on anything. So sometimes, but those are generally very foundational things. I would rather be, Eric Church says, I'd rather be wrong for the sake of the other, just not to lose them. Amen. The Lord will make them see eventually exactly right. And so, I just sort of get, I guess it saddens me when I see people being again, it's not that they can't believe that they're right, but just dogmatic in the way that they're willing to fight with others over it.
Yeah, and I think it's for the sake of they love God so much.
Yeah, I get it, for their zeal.
Yeah,
zeal,
like
Paul would say.
Paul said in Romans.
Yeah.
So I think that.
Yeah, usually when you start getting really deep into it, and you know this to be true too, you start looking at all the academic material and everyone else's material. But when I say academic, guys, too, by the way, the reason I'm using it, hey, thanks for the sub, Air Church, and, all of you that have subbed today, love and light, all of you, that when people, I keep getting.
I'm laughing about currencies thing about cat. I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
You're talking about.
I forgot. I lost my own train of thought. You didn't have anything to do with that. It's getting. Yeah. What was I saying?
Yes. So people's belief, interpretation of the Bible, right?
Yeah.
People can have strong opinion, but this all started with God.
In time. Yeah, I'm working my way back around there.
Yes. Yes. Shall we get back there?
They had dogs too, didn't they? When the Sphinx really a dog, Corinth?
Dogs are in the Bible.
Yeah.
So they're
but anyway, yeah. But they're bad in the Bible. Don't bring that up.
But they're in there.
That's true. Cats aren't in the Bible.
But I like dogs, so. Huh.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah. So the thing is that with I know what it was. When you get academics disagreeing, the reason I bring up academics, guys, is because these are men and women that are trained, studied, and they have access to the materials that a lot of us don't realize are available. They're interacting with a lot of material, and that's why I'm using that. And the point here is that when you see, I can't read the comments, I'm laughing, and I'm losing my train of thought, that when you see the academics, most of the time, and they're on two sides, the difference of opinion is over one little thing, is over a comma, or how do we interpret this one word,
yes,
or...
For example, what you just covered from Corinthians, was it? The book
Colossians.
Yes, about philosophy, main teaching. That's about comma placement.
That's about the word "and" actually, kai in Greek.
If you separate them or not.
Right, and so if you understand that that's a hendiatus and that the word "and" is put in there for emphasis, and the phrase is actually in some translations, more modern ones, and others that are trustworthy, that it's actually translated as Colossians 2:8 should be translated vain philosophical teachings or some version of that. There shouldn't be philosophy and vain teachings or corrupt teachings. It's one phrase, and people often seeing it in English parse it out, and even in Greek, the conjunction is there, kai, and is there. It's just you have to understand how to read these things, and when you look at that, you have to be real careful. You then also have to go back and do a whole bunch more study in the book, because you have to look at context. You have to look at who the author is, who they're writing to, what the occasion of the writing is. There's a whole lot that goes into interpreting, more than just reading at face value what the one verse is saying.
But it looks like, especially in English text, to Western audience or Japanese or whoever your background might be, it's different from how people used to write back then. So you have to take that into consideration as well. Yeah. So
for instance. And I'll say this too about philosophy, since we started here. I'll go back to this too, which is, I believe in a ministerial use of philosophy, guys, which means that it should be used to support or to help, or that's really not the right word. Serve. Thank you. Yeah, yes. Ministerial, to serve the Bible. All right, we use it as a tool of interpretation and theology. It is not a magisterial use. I don't think that philosophy should ever lord over the Bible. That's incorrect. If you want to know more about that one, William Lane Craig's Reasonable Faith on pages 47 and 48, he talks about ministerial and magisterial use of reason, and so you can check that out from there. So in Colossians, I have my glasses here. If I go to chapter 1, I'll show you guys what happens here real quick. Grammar. Corinth is saying people have no idea how important it is to properly parse out grammar, I think is what he means, when they get into scholarship. I've seen entire debates revolve around the use of a single word.
Yes, exactly right.
It's that way over the debate between the anatherus noun in John 1:1 see when the Jehovah's Witnesses want to say that that's not talking about Jesus, that it's the word was a God, and they because they don't understand it, and it gets in really weird. What's interesting here back in Colossians, all right, Paul says something here in the very beginning in 1:21 that's very interesting. So he starts getting in and launches into his introduction, talks about how awesome Jesus is, because Jesus is awesome. And I think it's 1:21. He says, all you who once were alienated and hostile in mind, doing evil deeds, he has now reconciled in his body of flesh his death in order to present you, I'm reading out of the ESV, guys, holy and blameless above reproach before him. Skip. Yeah, there's the verse I want. I thought it was chapter 1. Well, there it is. 1:9. I was thinking it started in 19. And so from the day we heard, here we go, we have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding, so as to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing to him, bearing fruit in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God. This verse, right after the introduction, is setting up, guys, what Paul's going to launch into here in Colossians. Now, why is this important? I hear all the time that people misunderstand that Colossians 2:8 is talking about the wisdom of men, that's what philosophy is, and therefore philosophy is bad. Paul's talking about a specific kind of philosophy. We talked about that earlier on in the broadcast tonight. Okay, he's talking about a particular what I differentiated as, let me use my same vernacular here, go back to my notes here, a particular philosophical content or concept, not a procedural. Philosophy as a whole, when we talk about it in terms of theology, we're talking about the procedure of philosophy, doing philosophy to interpret, the tools of philosophy to interpret the Bible and whatnot. We're not talking about content philosophy, meaning different schools of, styles, whatever in that sense, topics. Oh, Air Church, take care. Sorry you need to take off, but we understand. Oh, enjoy your date. And we're so glad you found us too. Love you. Be safe. So here, notice this, that when you have what Paul says here, this is really important, guys, is that he says, I want that you may be filled with the knowledge of his will, right? Whose? God's. Okay. In what? In all spiritual wisdom. Well, okay, and understanding, so as to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, fully pleasing to him, bearing fruit in every good work and increasing in the knowledge of God. So Paul also goes on to talk about being filled in understanding, so as to walk in a manner worthy of the Lord. I'd have to find it in my past. Where is it? All endurance delivered us from the domain. I want to keep going here. But Paul continues to say he wants them to be filled with the fullness of God. He wants them to have all knowledge. And the point here is when he's using this pas, he's not saying only spiritual wisdom of a certain kind. Okay, he wants them to be filled with all of the spiritual wisdom and understanding. And I don't have Logos right now open, but I'll get into the Greek on another time. But I want you guys to see this, that what Paul's using and saying and talking about here is that he wants them to have access to all kinds of things. Believe it or not, Paul uses the word wisdom all throughout Colossians. Now, why is that relevant? You might ask yourself, Sean, how does that, what does that have to do with anything, right? So the smiley face thing there, or whatever it is on Facebook there, or YouTube, right? It's this, that what you want to think about here is that Paul has used this word wisdom 4 or 5 times. What does the word philosophy mean? It comes from 2 roots, philos, sophia, love of wisdom. So we're either talking about a system, which is just the study of wisdom and knowledge and whatnot, or we're talking about the generic love of wisdom. Well, that's not what Paul's talking about. He's talking about a system. But moreover, he wants them to have wisdom. He wants them to have knowledge. But what is philosophy? It's the study of wisdom and knowledge. So Paul all throughout here is saying, I want you to have all wisdom. I want you to have spiritual wisdom. I want you to have this kind. And I want you to avoid these bad things over here. He's not talking about univocally, universally, that all philosophical understanding is bad, but a particular kind. How do we know that? If you continue on throughout chapter 2, Paul outlines what what it is that he's talking about. You guys asking me a question? Or are you talking to one another? I can't tell.
They're having fun. They're having fun.
Okay. Oh, the.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly how to put
Love
it.
the chat
His fingers are
section,
shorter than mine,
guys.
so I can't really do it like the little guy does. There's some slang that's profane in sign language, and I'm trying to avoid doing it when you put your hand up there to your face like that. It's 10 likes. Who didn't press the thumbs up button? It's probably the guy, Nate. It's probably the guy that I kicked off of here earlier. Oh no, wait. There's 11 watching now. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
You guys are so much fun.
Yeah, I do have a mighty good gust. Yeah, and here's the thing. Yeah, we don't need absolute certainty, and I know you guys know that. So, any other questions you guys have on that? Oh, so I get back to God and time. So I'm launching into all that to say this. Why am I saying all that? All right, here it is, guys. So obviously we know philosophy isn't bad. I'm sorry. It must be getting late over here. But also that the reason I bring all that up is to say that so often I hear people, when you're talking about concepts of God, say, well, that's just philosophy. Well, when you do theology, you have to move from the text into a concept, draw out of the text a concept that you can work with.
What do they even mean when they say that's just a philosophy?
Well, what they're saying is you're doing philosophy now. That's not the Bible anymore.
Are they trying to say that's useless information?
You'd have to ask. Maybe some of these folks could answer that better. But most of the time, the way it sounds is A, pejorative, but B, what it means is that what the individual is trying to say is that we've gotten off the topic and we're somehow now into philosophy, but we need to get back into the Bible or theology.
Talking about God.
That's just it. And
so
I think it's.
Don't get there.
I think it's Galatians. No, it's Philippians. I'd have to look and see.
Isn't it part of theology?
Yeah, it is.
Am I missing something?
No, that's exactly right. If it's part of theology, folks, is that when you study, is that starting with the Bible and working your way into concepts that are bigger than that.
Maybe what they mean is, we need to use something outside of the Bible text to figure that out. Therefore, we must not do it. Maybe that's what they mean.
That's general. I think you're right. I
didn't hear that kind of thing. That everything we need is written in the Bible. Something that's outside of the Bible, everything that's outside of the Bible is bad. I have heard that opinion. So if that's what they mean, I understand what they're trying to say.
Yeah, I agree with you, Brother Cornson. Yeah, and I used to be a fundamentalist, guys, for years.
Yeah.
I mean, in some ways I am, in the sense that I adhere to the fundamentals, but that's not the way most of us, we understand fundamentalism to be women can't wear pants, you got to have long hair.
I belong in that kind of church
you did too.
Well, so yeah, I get that.
Yeah, so that's not totally unusual. It's funny because if you think about, I want to say it's Galatians or Philippians, maybe one of y'all can give me the reference, that Paul clearly says, it's Galatians, because he's talking about the fruit of the Spirit. I think it's also in Philippians, might be, where he says, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are good, think on these things. He's talking about what we need to be thinking about and doing. Well, what is more pure and lovely and just and perfect than thinking and talking about God himself? Yes, it's not the pure fundamental study of the scriptures, but if we're going to talk about God at some point and we're going to think about the ramifications of who he is, we have to sort of step back from scripture sometimes to do that. And philosophy is our tool for doing that. Philosophy are our guardrails to keep us on the right path. That's funny, Brother Corns. Yeah, we were King James Version only, as KJV's only until 5 or 6 years ago, I think.
Something like that. I still enjoy KJV for that because it sounds nice and I'm used to it.
Yeah.
But
studying it in college. In fact, I couldn't get ordained at the church that I went to college at because they wanted me to affirm King James onlyism, and at the point when I was leaving, I was like, I did end up getting ordained at a fundamentalist Baptist church, but they were starting to change.
Yes, but if any of you enjoy KJV, that's great too.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with the KJV. I don't have any objections to it. I still have most of my Bibles are King James.
Yeah.
So I do use ESV now just because with our kids we found that it's a little bit easier. And
actually,
Roxby, good night. God bless you too.
Was asking about this. Why do you use King James? ESV and stuff like that.
Oh, somebody was asking why do we use ESV?
Not tonight, but I received a question in email.
I guess I'll hold off on God and time. That might be a whole other conversation. But
I love God and time topic, but that could
get to it.
very, very long topic.
Yeah, yeah. James White. I really enjoyed his stuff on that. Yeah. Yeah. Good night, Ross. You have a great night. God bless. We love you, and be safe and all that. And so you know, guys, that uh, I I don't have anything against the King James version at all. I think with our kids, and this was something that I used to poo-poo as a pastor, and people would say, "Oh, the King James is hard for kids. I use something else," and I'd be like, "Wow, you should use the King James. It'll make them smarter." The problem is the King James is full of a bunch of oh, thanks, Rox. Thank you for joining the Patreon, the support. We appreciate that. Yeah, Corns uses ESV too. Yeah, that's just it. I mean, I like the ESV from translating too. That's the other thing is once I got really good, there's Nate's poo-poo. Is that soft serve, Nate? So chocolate ice cream. Hey, Dinu.
I think it's funny. You always put two of them next to each other too.
Yeah.
So anyway, we even had our oldest son with KJV when he was like kindergarten.
Oh yeah, Brandon's
great.
Our oldest son is very smart. He takes after her.
Yeah, because we were using King James version back then.
It's just that the King James version has a bunch of familiar friends too. There are words that are translated into English that don't mean now what they intend to mean in the King James version, and it can get a little confusing because English has changed. A lot of people make the mistake of saying the King James uses Old English. It doesn't. It actually uses, I think it's Middle English, but it has changed enough that it can be a little confusing. And when I started translating from Greek, Love and Light uses German Bible. Awesome. I like that. And NASB. I like the NASB too, Love and Light. We got a whole bunch. You should see when we do the broadcast next Tuesday, the live event from the library, I'll show you our Bible stand has got, I don't know how many Bibles, 30, 40 Bibles on it.
We lost count.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. People come over and they're always like, what?
They're like, what?
When the Mormons and Joe.
To us, it's like, not that many guys, but.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, there's very few. There's some I don't use because they really are bad. But for the most part, there's a lot of Bibles that I really enjoy. And again, the equivalents, those of you that are familiar, that are more the ones that are more literal formal equivalents to the dynamic equivalents. The dynamic equivalents ones can still be useful. Now that I have learned and have been using more of my Greek skills, that's a Greek New Testament. Yeah. And Erika's been learning it.
Septuagint, no?
Yep, we've got a Septuagint. I enjoy.
I think one of the most useful tool, in my opinion, right? Don't you think?
Yeah.
Really awesome.
Yeah, the Septuagint is wonderful, and the reason for that, guys, if you don't know what the Septuagint is, it's a Greek Old Testament, right? The LXX, as they call it. Question, Radical Love asks. So the ESV is best for children and young adults? That's a good question, Radical Love.
I think there are other good options. They might not be the one and the only very best, but it's one of our favorite picks, I would say.
It's fairly good. I mean, any translation is going to have, pros and cons. I mean,
there's no such thing as perfect.
Right, because the problem is Greek is so difficult in an equivalence to really what do I want to say here? It's just really difficult to it's like Japanese and English. There's some words. I don't know if any of you are military or have had family that are military, but in the Army we say hua. Now in the Marine Corps they say hoorah. All right. Either way, it's the same. Essentially, the word means the same thing. We go back and forth teasing one another, but it's the same meaning. Ironically, in Japanese, they have a word that they use that to us that are military know exactly what it means, because if you tell a soldier or a Marine that means gambarimasu means hua, they're like, oh. And
I get it.
Yeah, and that's gambarimasu is a word in Japanese that you don't have in English. That not really. I mean, you could translate it, but you need a whole sentence to really get the meaning out. And so anyway, yeah, it can be hard to get a perfect translations Radical Love to get to the point there. But ESV, we like it. We think it's pretty good. Yeah, we have Greek interlinears. That's something else, y'all, too, I thought about doing as a course, a really base level course, mind you, but a course on New Testament Greek for y'all in the Patreon section on that. because we're a teaching ministry predominantly, and that's something I don't know if I can do on YouTube fully, because it's just very time consuming isn't the right word, very in depth, and not something I want to do where you're going to get trolls coming on and interfering and, you know, silly comments on the bottom. I don't mind the challenge to what I teach. That's not it. It's just that
we cannot get the deep study because we are too busy with the trolls.
Yes. 16th. Radicalist's daughter's going to be 16 on the 20th, so wanting to get her a good translation that's good for her to read and understand as I use the King James Version. Yeah, I think the nice thing is if you've used the King James Version for a long time, and I think Corinth would agree, the change over to ESV is different, but it's not radically different.
Actually, it's quite similar. It's more similar than what I expected.
Yeah, but it's clear enough too that you're like, oh yeah, okay, I got that.
I know many of you are accessing from phone right now, right? Do you guys have Bible app in your phone? Because if you do, you can go ahead and compare the two translations to see how different they are, right? So if you're not familiar with Bible app, you can just look that up in your how do you call it? Shop thing?
Oh, in your like
App Store?
App Store or
how it's called?
Google Play or whatever.
But what's popular is the Bible app called New Version, and that one will let you read all kinds of translation, including Japanese. Foreign language. So you can compare them.
Yeah. So that's what
see if you like that.
Yeah.
But the key, I think one of the key is once you find what you like, you have to be willing to compare that with other translation, especially when you come across questions, and not just use one translation, because each translation, like Sean said, has weakness. And if you're confused about what you're reading, then it could be the particular translation didn't have the very best, easy to understand translation. So it's helpful to be open-minded and be ready to check out other translation as well at that kind of time. And your version is, or Bible app is useful for that, to go, wait, this passage doesn't make sense. Then you can just check out a trusted translation. Like if you like KJV, check that out.
You use the U version too?
Yes, I have U version, but you always say that use
Logos. Use Logos. The reason why I say use Logos is because it's the old. I don't know if you guys remember. Dinu will remember Ghostbusters. We're paying for this stuff. Use some of it, right? So I've sunk. I don't know if I should admit this in front of Erika, how much money I've put in Logos. I put when I'm done one day, right? I put $25,000 into Logos. We have 9,000 resources in that. Okay, so
over many
but that's years. over a decade worth of
many little bit at the time.
Right. So and so that's why when I say use Logos, because she's signing into our account to use it. So it's got a ton of resources in there. So
I heard about Blue Letter Bible as well.
Yeah.
Right? I heard somebody say that's good. So so that's one of the good things, right? That you can compare translation easily without having to buy many translations and have them in hand. So
any of them are good, guys. There's nothing I don't particularly care which.
The reason some people like U version is because it comes with devotion. Currents is shocked, Sean. Yes, Sean.
Yeah, I saw the number. Yeah, 25,000. Yeah, I'm not kidding. Yes, that much.
Oh my goodness.
I'm that kind of guy.
And that's how one of the ways we are giving you guys this membership with Faith Life, guys, right?
So Logos doesn't cost that much, guys, just so you're aware. It's Faith is the response to that. Yeah. So D News responded to a comment I made about we're from the same era, so we're familiar with some of the same things from that time period. So you guys, again, 25,000 is over longer than 10 years that I've been using Logos.
Many
and as a pastor, you guys have to understand we have a budget. Sometimes we're given to buy books, so I would use that. Okay, and that's your livelihood as a pastor. Okay, so if you guys ever want to do a solid for your pastor, Ask him what book he would like and get it for him. You'll
Sean
blow
is
him away.
very, very serious about studying.
I've had when I've gone in and worked as a pastor. I've some of the pastors I used to work for. You'd go in, their office would be a giant library, and we're talking about in a room that's 1,000 square feet. And there's nothing but bookshelves all along all the walls, and just jam packed. And when I go and study Ghostbusters, yeah, that's the reference. That I'd go in and I could just grab books and use them. And a lot of stuff that we use in the ministries are reference. They're commentary stuff or they're language study stuff. They're not like books that you just sit down and read. And unfortunately, academic stuff like that is very expensive. And that's just how it is. But yeah, it's over 10 years.
It's like 15.
Yeah, it's more than, when I say over 10 years, I mean beyond 10 years. Sorry, not over the course of. Yeah, if I used to get a discount from Logos when I used to be a professor teaching at Bethel, and I would get I don't remember how much they gave me. I don't even know if I'd be allowed to say anyway. But yeah, if you can get a discount and you're interested in Logos, it's nice. Now the cool thing about Logos, guys, too, is this. I would just get the very base level package, figure out what you're going to spend, get the very base level package that's going to get you access to all the tools, and then go buy the commentary sets and books individually. Because if you do make the mistake that some of us that pastors have made, you do a large package set, you don't end up getting a lot of the stuff that's going to be useful to you a lot of times. So just keep that in mind. I mean, you get something like the gold edition, which I don't know what that costs nowadays, $500-600 or less. I mean, again, just get the base level and buy what books you like, buy what commentary sets you like. I wished I had done that in the past, because now the commentary sets that I want, need, and use, the academic stuff, is out of my reach, because I'm not going to spend more money anymore on that. Masters of the Universe, even. So anyway, yeah, that's what I would say. So getting back to the God and time thing is that, and if you need to bug out at any point, you can. I won't blame you.
I might go check on kids in a little bit.
I'm sure Chris is sleeping since they haven't come up to get us.
But I might go check on him.
Okay. But, you know, on God and time, guys, just understand that, again, getting back into what I was saying, that there's no need to feel like I'm going to present two sides of this, that you need to hold the one position only. I have a particular point of view, and then there's another, obviously. There's actually more than two. And that sounds weird, right? So the God and time, you need to understand it from this point of view, is that, oh, thank you, Nate, for that Logos code. They're awesome. So on God and time, there's two ways to think of it. The God is either temporal or atemporal. Now, typically, this is expressed as 94 Corinths. I thought you'd be older than that. I was born in the 70s. Yeah. No, didn't miss out on much, Corinths. So temporal and atemporal. People would generally use the colloquialisms that God is either in time or out of time. Now, this, I remember I had a good friend that this really frustrated him when I would use this expression, God's in time or he's out of time, because he said, God's not, God doesn't have occupy a physical location in space. And I was like, oh no, brother, that's not what I mean. When we refer to God as being in or out of time, okay, what we mean is that I was already out of high school in '94. Wow, yeah, but actually the '80s were awesome. I will say that the '80s had a lot of good things. That my oldest daughter, the second oldest of the five, came in and we were talking about the '80s today, and yeah, the '80s were awesome in the sense of the economic boom and the sense of awesomeness. But anyway, so with God and time, that it can frustrate people because they think that it has to be one way or the other. In theory, you could hold to either position. The only thing is, if you're going to hold that God is outside of time, you need to be able to answer certain questions. Same thing if you say God is in time, you have to be able to answer certain questions, and you want to be careful not to hold conflicting views. That, again, it's not like you're going to go to hell if you can't answer these things, guys. Okay, it's not that big of a deal. All right, but that that God being, again, temporal in time or atemporal. So if I use those terms, that's important. I need to clarify that first. Okay, Then, let me think, what are some more terms that I need to clarify there?
God is in A or B?
Oh, A theory and B theory of time.
B theory. How many of you are familiar with that when we say God is in A theory of time or B theory?
Yeah. So A theory would be the idea that time, just as most of us understand it, just passes. Pretty standard view, right? That the present is all that's. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, 80 was past.
Yeah, 80
and then comes 90s.
And then comes 90s, still all past, right? And tomorrow hasn't happened yet. Okay, it's just standard that there's
sense, right?
certain standard passing, normal view of passing of time. It's a normal, the standard view. So with the B theory of time, though, what you have there is that the idea that 1984 is still happening right now. It's just as real and present as today.
Yeah.
That's sort of weird, right? I mean, it's a fun sci-fi kind of idea to entertain, but there's not, in my opinion, good philosophical grounds for it.
Yeah.
You run into problems with that. Think of it this way, right, folks? If we're going to hold to a B theory of time, that means Jesus is eternally on the cross dying since the moment it happened, right? It's always, it's eternally happening.
Yes, because according to B theory, the moment Jesus was crucified on the cross is just as real happening right now as today, right here as having this conversation.
Yeah.
So.
And Corinth, that's the A theory of time, brother. Corinth says that I really just view time as a little more than a celebration of succession
exactly,
of events.
Yes, that A theory of time is how we are experiencing time right now.
Now, another thing to clarify is that some people confuse when we say space-time, that time is therefore physical. Time is not physical. Now, some physicists will balk at that, and they'll try to go round and round to explain that, no, time is sort of that's not what I mean. When I say it's not physical, it's part of our universe. So we think of it as being a part of the physical universe, but time in and of itself is just a passing of a succession of events. That's all it is. It's non-physical. Corinth, that's a good question. I'd have to go back and study on the defenses of the B theory of time, because to be honest, not a lot of people I'm aware of actually hold it.
You mean God existing in B theory? Is that
yeah, that might be the question, but I'm not even sure. That's a good question, Brother Corinth. Yeah, what are some of the defenses they give for the theory of B time or B theory of time? I'm not aware if you're referring to God being in the B theory of time. I don't know. Now, keep in mind, A and B theory of time are not the same as God being in or out of time. Those are just, A and B theory of time are referring to the passing of time. So just in case you may go, I understand that. I just want to clarify in case anyone's confused on that generally when we say God is temporal or atemporal, most of the time we're talking about A theory of time. But I suppose you could have B theory of time under that as well. So generally, again, most Christians and most people I know are going to hold to an A theory of time. The question is going to be God in or out of time, or temporal or atemporal. Okay, meaning not, like atheist, not a theist.
I don't know. I think there are many people who hold B. Many Christians who hold B.
Really? That hold a B theory?
Doesn't.
Oh, there might be. I'm just not aware of them. All right, well, fair enough.
I think.
Let me say it this way then, because that might be the case.
What I mean is God existing in B theory of time.
You mean out of time?
Yeah.
That's not B theory. B theory of time is referring to how time passes.
Okay.
God being outside of time isn't a B theory of time.
Okay. So what I mean is God existing outside of this time is what I meant. Right.
That's just God being atemporal. Atemporal.
Yes.
So now, could God be? There are some that will say that when God is atemporal, that He's experiencing a sort of B theory of time. All right, fair enough. Which might be what you're thinking of.
I think I just confused you.
All right, so let me clarify all this, guys. Let's just hold to an A theory of time. That time is passing. That it's constantly linear. What happened yesterday isn't still happening. A couple hundred years ago, I heard an atheist critiquing William Lane. A couple of years ago, I don't know why I read 100. Sorry, parents. A couple of years ago, I heard an atheist critiquing William Lane Craig's theory of time, but it went completely over my head. Perhaps I should try to take another stab at it. We'll cover it in the same thing in the Patreon group. I'm going to be covering a lot of these really, really complex things. I actually have Dr. Craig's course on time.
Yes, it's a great one too. Very in-depth.
Quite expensive. Yeah. It's actually a college course he taught at Wheaton. It's like
shaking the camera too.
Sorry.
Okay, let me check on
children
to make sure.
Yep.
Step by step.
So
okay.
Getting back into this, so if God is outside of time, which is what Erika's thinking of here, technically what that means is that he's not experiencing time itself. All right. Now, in my mind, that can be somewhat problematic in the sense that some theologians will express that God is experiencing an eternal now. So he's not experiencing a passing of time. Why? Because he's outside of time. Okay, so there's no time. In addition, most people hold to this position because what they say is, well, God doesn't age. Okay, they're confusing here eternality with being in or outside of time, being exposed to time. God can be, God can be, Love and Light says, I didn't even know about B time, and I'm German. Oh, guten Tag, wie geht es Ihnen? So, you know, you can have God in or out of time and still be eternal. See, there again, terms being clarified. This is a foundational concept of philosophy, guys, that you clarify terms. Big deal. All right. And so, oh, thanks for the sub, Jonathan. So one thing you definitely want to do is clarify that, okay, if I'm saying here that God is eternal, right? He lives forever. He can do that in or out of time. He doesn't need to age. Okay, he's eternal. All right, different from infinite. Remember that too. Okay, they sort of express very similar concepts, but we want to be careful about saying God is infinite in any way because that is sort of different. I'm not saying it's necessarily wrong to say God is infinite. I'm just saying that's not what I mean when I'm referring to his age. He's eternal. That no beginning, no end. Okay. So let me get back into this. So question, Radical Love asks, when is it going to start the lessons on Patreon? So I'm going to be starting the lessons on Patreon this week. I've got a paper that I have to finish, guys, and I am behind. I had to pay another $40 to extend it, and so I've got to get that done. I am this close to having the paper done. So within the next few days, in which case I'll start filming videos and immediately releasing them on the Patreon. In addition, my view of Patreon, guys, is an online classroom for all of us to discuss things and just sort of have a great time and get deep like what we're talking about now. In addition, I'll be recommending books that we're going to be doing. I'll try to do that as well. Rox had a great recommendation, and so I'll try to do that on the channel here as well, give you guys a heads up. We'll figure out what medium we're going to use, and then I'll give you a heads up a few days ahead of time. Hey, this is what we're discussing. This is some resources. So hopefully that'll be helpful. But so very soon, Radical Love, to answer your question again, is that within the next week or so, you should start to see videos popping up on there for that material. There's already folders of information on there, some of which you guys already have access to, those of you that are on the Faith Life group, or in the Faith Life group. Anyway, getting back into it with time. So, okay, A theory, B theory of time. God's eternal no matter where he exists. So we don't have to worry about him getting old, okay? If God is outside of time, all right, then that means he is probably in an eternal now. Which means that there's this weird moment, which it's not like he's re-experiencing the same, it's not like a groundhog, minute. That's not what we're saying, but he's outside of time, so there's no passing there. So he's almost trapped, is what a lot of people have problems with that feel like God's temporal, because that doesn't seem to make any sense. Here's the other problem with temporality of God and atemporal God, meaning God being outside of time. If he's outside of time and God's a Trinity, which as an Orthodox Christian I hold to, Jesus entered into the world, right? If he's part of the Trinity, he's now exposed the other two parts of Trinity to time. You can't just kind of come in and out of time. It's not, remember what I said, it's not a physical space. It's bound to our physical universe in the sense the way we think about it, right? But it's not. It's not the same thing as a physical thing you can just sort of move in and out of. And I've heard theologian philosophers get into, well, maybe when Jesus became human, it was, I'm not kidding now, this is an actual explanation. His human body's like a spacesuit, so he's able to come into time without actually being exposed to it. And then when he dies, he sheds the spacesuit. Yeah, I don't, that doesn't work for me. All right. I don't mean to make fun of, some good theologians postulated that. So I'm not trying to make fun. I'm actually saying it like, that's not very satisfactory, guys. Time is not a physical barrier that can be moved around like that. It's just simply not. And I think it really takes some I don't want to be vulgar. Somebody has to be really brave, let me put it that way, to postulate something like that, okay? In the sense that we're going to say that God can just, do whatever like that. Yes, can God do virtually anything? Yeah, absolutely. If it's not logically incoherent, that's fine. I'm fine with that. But so Corinth asks a question: would you consider time as a dimension or not so much? So time is in a sense a dimension, Corinth, but again, I don't think it's physical. Again, what we're saying, and your explanation of it was great, was that it seems to me that your explanation was that time is just a passing of events. So it's even if somebody were in a fifth dimension looking back on four dimensions, we occupy four dimensions, but we only observe three. Okay, we don't observe time in a fourth dimension way, and that get into a spacesuit. We don't observe the fourth dimension the way somebody beyond that would. So it's postulated that if God's outside of time, he's viewing everything at once, from the beginning to the theoretically on, all right, like a ray. I say not an end because, again, once he's created time, you can't destroy time. That's the other thing, right? So that means that from the beginning until forever, time had a beginning point. We know that it just has no end now. Okay, funny how that works. But so this is how deep God and time gets, guys. I'll try to keep it, on our feet on the ground a little bit here. But the point is this: that all of a sudden you can see, well, if God's outside of time, he's experiencing an eternal now moment. So he's not experiencing the passing of anything. And that's great, but he also can't, in theory, interact with anything in time, which means, hence, determinists who understand time pretty well want to say then that that's why God determines everything prior to the existence. A consistent Calvinist, this is what they'll say, guys like Dr. James White. And I go, I get where you're coming from. The reason why James White is a hardcore determinist, that might be a little unfair. Why he's a stringent determinist, okay? I don't mean hardcore, the term hardcore in a pejorative way, is that that God can't act on the physical universe if he's not in time, is the theory. Therefore, he has to make everything happen ahead of time and then just let it play out. Okay, and that's a consistent theory. That really is. If you're going to say God is outside of time, the problem that I have with that is, how do you have Jesus entering into time, in his physical embodiment? Not to mention the potential appearances in the Old Testament. Now you have the theophanies, or the Christophanies, some people call them, the appearances of the angel of the Lord in the Old Testament, not to mention God at Sinai and potentially at other times. So you've got problems there with God. Again, you just can't, once you're in time, you're in time. So some people will say, well, if God's in time, he can't know what's happening. That's not true at all. That goes back to another theory, which is the a perceptualist model of omniscience versus a conceptualist model. You say, what? A perceptualist model of omniscience, okay, God's perfect knowledge, I'm going to call it that, is the idea that God has to be outside of time. Again, everything, all of time is like a picture to him, so he can see it all happening at once. That's how he's omniscient. To me, yeah, it's certainly possible, but it's not. I don't think of the all-powerful creator of heaven and earth as being a being that has to look out perceptually and see things. After all, granted, he doesn't have eyes, right? But moreover, that he could still perceive things with sight, okay, of some kind. But the problem is that oh, really? So Corinth said No, that's fine, brother. I would consider myself a hardcore determinist, really. Yeah. So, and that's fine. Again, I'm not. Yeah, that's totally fine. I think it's consistent. If you're going to hold that God's outside of time, now you sort of know why. Okay, and God needs to determine everything beforehand in order for it to play out, and then he sort of has to be hands off with that, and that's consistent. Dr. White's model there is consistent. I have no problem with that as far as consistency goes. Some people are not as consistent though, and this is why I say, your philosophy of God and time really matters in what you believe. Again, I think the only problem with it is that God interacting with anything at any time is going to be problematic. Christ coming into the world, Old Testament appearances of God at Sinai, that's problematic for God being outside of time. So I don't know. Now, I was going back to the perceptualist model of omniscience. God can be outside of time and know things. His omniscience or perfect knowledge, he can be conceptualist. Okay? In other words, he just knows them. And to me, I go, yeah, that makes sense. That's the God of the Bible. He doesn't need to look out and see things in order to, what if he didn't look? Would he not know? And of course, that's ridiculous. Okay, that's ridiculous. Radical love. Hey, what's up, John? Yeah, so Jesus was in time and beyond time. I want to understand that more. Yeah, I'd have to understand what you mean by beyond time there, Rad, for short. But yeah, so again, some of the models are that God is omnitemporal. All right, so some of the models will say, well, God is outside of time prior to creation, after creation, inside of time. All right, that makes sense too. So you can have either model. The question here again isn't which model is right. It's just I'm trying to lay out for you guys a foundation of the different views. And we want to make sure that no matter what view we have, that we're consistent with it. Because otherwise, and by the way, all views are going to have problems. There is no view and that I've seen, that I've studied, that are going to be problem-free in much of anything in theology. It's just not the way it is. The question is understanding where do the problems lie, and just knowing that and understanding, where the difficulties are. Now, there's another position here that I wanted to outline. Let me see if I can remember it, guys. You'll have to forgive me. This is a lot of study I've done over the years in this field, a lot of books I've read, and it's a complicated topic. So if I don't remember everything, forgive me. Hurt. Love and lie. Just caught that. Hurt. It hurt the brain. So anyway, y'all are awesome. I'm not sure. Sometimes I catch a comment and I'm like, oh, what does that mean? I'm not sure. Because I'm not reading them all successively. But so there are different views about God being atemporal, outside of time, okay, in terms of how he exists there. The only one that to me, the eternal now view, all right, that makes sense. I can comprehend that. Whether God perceives or knows with his knowledge, both are still consistent. It's fine. The one to me that I don't think is satisfying and is tricky, and really I need to explore further, is the idea that God has a good question, Radical Love. I'll answer that in just a second. Is the idea that God is experiencing a God time outside of time. Now you might wonder, well, yeah, no, that sounds like a good proposition. Again, remember Corinth's definition that's pretty well widely accepted as far as what time is. It's the passing of successive events. If God is experiencing the passing of successive events, he's temporal. Period. That's it. That's it. Now there was Hugh Ross posed this idea. I think was the one that posed this idea of a God time, which is fine. But again, there he's not atemporal anymore. He's just somehow think of it as relativism. He's experiencing time at a different rate, a different speed. Time isn't physical in the sense of a location. Okay, so we want to be careful not to confuse that in that sense when we say in and out of time, that it has to do with physicality. So oh, thanks, Florence. And I'm not perfect on this. I do have to review. This is one of those topics that completely befuddle me every time. Yeah, me too. And hey, listen, guys, I'm not settled on this topic. That's why I'm not really trying to give much of an opinion on it. There's every, like I said, every point of view in theology is going to be problematic on, and we just sort of go, you got to take the good with the bad and what makes the most sense, what has the least amount of problems for me, or corresponds to the way I view reality in terms of the Bible, how I see it and perceive it. And I'm fine with that, no matter what the view is. I don't want anyone to think that it has to be one way. So these are a little bit expensive on God and Time, but they're Dr. Craig's courses on them. Radical Love, and they're not books. This is like 20 DVDs, 1 hour each, so over an hour each, some of them. That is a grad level course from Dr. Craig. And then Radical Love, Dr. Craig did a book on this. I think it's called God and Time. John and I were talking about it the other night. There's also a 4 Views book, I'll have to check, which I think is just titled God and Time, or Zondervan Counterpoints. Might be 4 Views, might be less, might be 2 Views, I don't remember, but it's a Zondervan Counterpoints. I will try to find it, and I'll shoot you an email or a message with that Radical Love for those 2. Dr. Craig's book is excellent. It is going to be slow going. It was for me when Erika and I read it, because it's chock full of a lot of heavy, in some ways physics, not super heavy, but it is full of physics, because he does want to get into relativity theory and explain things. So he's covering all the bases, which he also does in those courses. As John mentioned, for some folks, it's a good reference. For me, I read through it, but it was because it befuddled me, like the way Corinth was mentioning, that I really wanted to understand it a little better. Because when I hear people say, well, that's contradictory, these 2 views you're holding, I'd go, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. When they'd explain why, I'd think, well, yeah, I need to come up with a better understanding of this. It's not a perfect understanding, and I don't need certainty. I just want to understand the field at play. Oh, you're welcome, Radical Love. So Love and Light was saying it happened after he saved me. Not sure if he really loved me, as my life was. Yeah, I hear you. Not exactly an angel before, but he told me in the dream that he does. I fell on my face worshiping. Amen. That's an awesome testimony, Love and Light. Yeah, Yeah, I didn't grow up as a pastor's kid myself, or even, I grew up in an Episcopal and Catholic home, so I wasn't Baptist until I moved out of my home, and wasn't saved until then, at about the age of 21, roughly. Knew that God existed my whole life, thought I knew him because I knew who he was, but didn't have a relationship with him. So that's awesome. I know the feeling. So yeah, anyway, again, please, guys, keep in mind, I am not trying to shoot down any one position or condone another, in either way in the God and Time. Any other questions on the God and Time information that I can give, I'm happy to do. Sorry, guys, if I start getting the reason why I've been so forgetful tonight is this is the latest broadcast I've done. The time doesn't bother me. I'm usually up till 3 or 4 in the morning. I rolled out of bed today at 12 noon, or yes, today. Yeah, still today. But I take medicine for my lower back. It's not narcotic or anything, but it will make me. It's gabapentin, for those of you who know what it is. So it's a pain blocker. So it does make me a little sleepy. So as I start taking it later in the evening, I do start a little sleepy. So if I'm not altogether there, or I'm forgetting what I was saying, it could be the medication. Oh, thanks, Radical Love. Yeah, that's right. It's on the channel. Yeah, and I didn't mean to make the testimony thing about me. I didn't mean that at all. Yeah, Corinth, I used to do that, brother. Getting up at 3:30 for work in the military. Oh, yeah. Man, up at dark 30. So, but yeah, and it's funny because most of my life I haven't been a night owl. Even when I was in the military, hated it because I get up real early in the morning. So I'd be in bed by 9 o'clock, but not anymore. And it's partly because with the kids and studying for school right now, I have to get, I need my time, quiet time to read and everything. And because I don't want to push them away when I'm studying, I sleep in late. Thank you, Radical Love. I sleep in late, and so when I get up at noon, I can spend time with them and the family and Erika. Erika and I can sit in the office here and we can hang out and we talk about, that's our day, talking about theology and whatnot. And then, oh, thanks, Brother Corrence. I appreciate that. And we sit in here and we'll talk about whatever. And oh, this is one thing I want to tell y'all too, to encourage you, is if you're married and you have, you know, your spouse or if you're dating or engaged, whatever, or to have a friend, you want to get started doing kind of what Eric and I do, right? Getting together and hanging out. Of course, Eric and I are always happy to talk about this stuff, but just know that what we do is we just started simple years ago for our own studies. I'm not talking about college or, you know, ministry, but for our own studies. And we would watch a Dr. Craig video or a Ravi video or ravioli, as Nate said, whatever the video was, we would watch it and we would pick one topic from it and we would talk about it. And then that would start us researching. So we'd get online, and before I knew any better, I'd use in between college, so I've got 10 years of school. So, but in between the last school that I finished and me going back now, you know, there were certain things that I had to worry about for research being valid. For instance, Wikipedia wasn't something that wasn't big. Now, what was I saying? Sorry, I got distracted there. I was reading the comments. I'll respond in just a second. But at any rate, we pick a topic, research on it, and just talk. You just talk about the thing, and then we do research. Oh, I know what it was, Wikipedia. So before I knew any better, I was using Wikipedia as a reference source. We went back to school and realized, yeah, that's. Oh, before I went back to school, I realized, yeah, that's not an academic resource. So at any rate, so we just use the internet and or books that we had, and we do research and just pick one topic, just one simple thing, and discuss it. And that was so much fun. And I think Radical loves saying go to bed, go rest. So I will in just a second. Love and light. Amen, sister. And Radical love. God is good. Amen. And are there any other questions before I take off? Because that's a good cue. Yeah, it's really helpful. That really helped us a lot, and it's really helped I won't say it's helped our relationship like we needed it, but it's just been great because we study together now, and I love it because we're in the car. The kids talk about theology. The kids are awesome. I'm reading Feinberg's theology book to them, our Bible study. They're always like, "Why is it at church, Dad? The lessons are so easy, but yours are so hard." And I'm like, "Well, do you not like them?" They're like, "No. It's just you cover a lot more material." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I push you all, but, well, I don't push them, but I don't talk down to them. That's something that we've never done. So we always, same reason why I communicate to you guys, assuming that you're following what I'm saying, because I'm not going to spoon feed you. You know, treat everyone that way. I always assume I'm the dumbest guy in the room anyway. That's another topic for another day. So anything else before I go? Any questions you guys have? I appreciate all of y'all and being on here and hanging out and watching. Any prayer requests, Brother Sean? Yeah. Any for you guys? That's another thing I was going to ask if sometime you guys wanted to have. This is probably crazy, right? Like a time where we all get on privately, just the believers, and have a prayer time. Yeah. And so anyway, let us know. Yeah, that's right, Brother Corrence. That's all complexity is just simplicity multiplied. That's exactly right. We use that same. I'm wondering, Corrence, if you're ever in the military. It's that same expression in the military. There's a lot of things you say that I'm like, yep. Night, Dinu. Night, y'all. What was the other question? Prayer request. So anyway, yeah. Just pray for us. We need to move here soon, and so we're gonna have to find a place. So pray for us on that, sister. And we appreciate it. And yeah, that'd be a huge blessing, and we'll be praying for y'all. And if y'all want to have some sort of online prayer thing eventually in the future. Like I said, a private thing. We can all get on there and do that. Night, Brother Carnes. All right, y'all. Get some rest. See you soon. Tuesday. Won't be this long. God bless y'all. Love you. Out of here.